I'm Jason Sylvia, and this is the Creative Capital Show. A show about creative people and how those creative people turn into entrepreneurs by taking their creativity and turning it into a business and facing all the trials and tribulations along the way. We often think about clothes as something to wear to protect us from the elements, or a uniform that's used to fit in. But have you ever wondered about using clothes as a form of self-expression, or a way to provide access to a different lifestyle? If you have, then you will want to hear the story of this episode's guest, Albert Kyei-Poakwa, the owner and founder of ready-to-wear luxury lifestyle brand Pour La Ville. Pour La Ville translates to for the city, which is appropriate given Albert's inspiration comes from the city he calls home, that city being Providence. In this episode, I sit down and talk with Albert about the transition from being someone who appreciates fashion to someone who creates fashion, the importance of choosing the right partners to work with, the struggles of learning the business of fashion, why we tie memories to certain pieces of clothing, his dream to have Anna Wintour come to Providence, and a whole lot more. And it all started with a movie-like moment in a nightclub. Enjoy. Albert Kyei-Poakwa. Hopefully I pronounced that right.
Yeah, you did.
Nice. Okay. That was already a good start.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. And actually, it's weird. You're saying thank you for having me, but I'm in your studio right now.
It's crazy how that works. Right?
Yeah, it's just a very weird thing of like, oh, wait a minute. Like, thank you for having me on your show, but I'm physically in your space. The beauty of being able to it's the beauty of being able to have a mobile podcast set up.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you can make people feel more comfortable and go to
this
their
is
spot.
Different. Like,
yeah.
It kind of reminds me of, you remember with COVID when they started doing the tiny desk, but
yes.
They started doing the concerts in the home, and it just makes like the experience so much more intimate, you know? And I think like it's so great that like you can invite people on your podcast, but you could pull up where they feel comfortable. They could host you in their space and, you know, kind of do it. You know, like let's say we were at my house or something, we could have been like sitting on the floor, legs crossed, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's cool.
I think you and I are going to do the A&J Tiny Table podcast instead of Tiny Desk.
Yeah,
watch out,
honestly,
NPR. Watch out.
Yeah, honestly, look, we should brand that. I think
Tiny Table podcast.
No, wait. I think you're onto something. Seriously, it's like
have it on a little tray table and get like the smallest recording interface we could find, and maybe get sponsored. Be like, do you have a tiny setup?
Yeah,
Like,
Tiny Table from Zoom podcast. Yeah, I'm gonna write that down. I like that.
Tiny Table podcast. With Albert and Jason. There you go, everybody. The Tiny Table podcast.
They have just witnessed history being made.
Yep. So now when that other podcast is famous and this one goes completely down the shitter.
I wouldn't say all that.
Yeah. I mean I will, and I'm hosting the show. But but when that happens, everybody could be like, I knew back when I heard that episode of Creative Capital Show that nobody listens to anymore.
Oh my goodness.
That the Albert and Jason Tiny Table podcast was going to be a thing.
Honestly, it's a concept. I haven't really seen anything like that. And I watch a lot of podcasts, so I think
we will totally get sued by NPR, but that's fine. Anyway. Yeah. Don't worry, people. We're actually going to do this episode. So, Albert, you have a label.
Yes,
a fashion label.
Brand. Yes, sir.
Called Pour La Ville.
Yes.
But before we get into that, I want to start with, I try my best to do research for this show. Yeah. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. With this, the information that I found was not necessarily like the whole like Nardwuar type sense.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
But one thing I did notice is, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It seems like more years ago you were more the model / Instagram fashion person type of route.
Yeah, that's
so. Would that be?
Correct.
I mean, and especially with the and I've seen you around. I've seen some of the brands you wear, which I can appreciate.
Thank you.
But can you talk about that start and how that all got started, whether that was from, you always like dressing like, well, maybe as a kid, was it like the situation with Sudi, which that's an episode to go listen to, everybody. Yes, I'm going to shamelessly,
episode.
thank you. I want to shamelessly plug my own stuff during this as always, where you had like an older sibling or like an older friend in foods. Like what started that first?
Yeah. So, honestly, so what really got me into fashion was my older cousins. So shout out to my cousin Aaron. Shout out to my cousin Leslie, rest his soul, and my cousin Aubrey as well. They were just always super fly, They really I used to go to my cousin Aaron's house like every day after school because my parents worked a lot, and he's the one that like introduced me into like basically took me on like a huge culture run, like put me onto like certain rap music, like just things because I'm the oldest in my household, so a lot of things that I wasn't exposed to, there was nobody obviously that was gonna show it to me. So when I went to my cousin's house, like I was just listening to the music they were listening to, I was reading the magazines they were reading, I was going with them to play basketball, just different things, and like they were always super heavy into sneakers, so it obviously started as sneakers, and then we would like watch music videos. That's how I got into like the fashion sense. I saw what, the artists were wearing back then, like Jay-Z, Kanye, things of that nature. And then like, yeah, it basically went on from there. And I was like, I'm like way younger than them. So like, it looked like in my age group, I was super advanced because I was wearing things that like people my age weren't really into.
Can you name some of those things?
Yeah.
Just some
So
of those
like
pieces?
when I was in like elementary school and like middle school, I was wearing Comme des Garçons. And that's because like that's what my cousins were into. Like my cousin was super into like Kanye and Pharrell, so I was wearing Bape early, like super early on Supreme, all things of that nature. Like before like streetwear like was really a wave, because if you look at streetwear now, especially like brands like Supreme, they kind of like geared towards like younger kids. Like I don't know if you've noticed, but Supreme is technically like the ideology is technically geared towards like a younger crowd. So like when I got
like a kid who skates,
yeah,
which
exactly.
makes sense for the brand.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those brands that you grow with, but then you kind of grow out of. I don't know if you noticed, like at some point I was super huge into Supreme, and then like it's like an entry level brand where you start with it, and then you start to like gain your own knowledge and own insight on fashion, so you kind of let go of it,
I mean, for me, I think it evolved too. I went from that to like Noah,
yeah,
which I think makes a natural evolution. Because for anybody that doesn't know, Noah Babenzian was their creative director at one time, and then he started his own brand, Noah, which to me feels like if you grew up with Supreme, but you're getting older and you're possibly becoming
more
a parent
mature
or something like that. Noah takes that spirit, but kind of puts it in a more refined, more mature, a little bit more higher end on like the textiles, even though Supreme stuff is actually like made in the USA
it's
and
great.
things like that.
It's great quality.
And
Well,
now J. Crew, because now Noah's doing the design direction for J. Crew's like menswear, which God knows they needed it for fuck's sake. Holy shit.
Yeah, J. Crew. I won't say anything, but
they needed the help.
Yeah.
They needed the help.
A lot of brands need help, but that's a whole different conversation. But so that's kind of where it started. And like I said, like, I grew up kind of at like the exponential growth of like internet culture. So like when Tumblr and stuff was, getting really popular and things, like it was just exposing me to so much, And then like I'll never forget, like one time what was it? I think when Watch the Throne came out, when Ye said, "What's that jacket, Margiela?" And my cousin just always kept repeating that to me. He was like, "Yo, bro, do me a favor, go on Google and look up that jacket." I'll never forget the image that came up. I believe it was the collab with H&M. It was a jacket it was basically essentially made out of belts, leather belts. And it was just like the craziest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Like I was never exposed to anything of that nature. So I was like, wow, like, and then from there I just went down a rabbit hole. Like Margiela became my favorite designer, and like just been years and years and years of research and just like, yeah. I just love fashion so much, it's like a outward of expression of who I am. Like it's never necessarily about like the price point, but it's more so like fashion has more so always been like a feeling for me. Like when I get dressed, it's because I'm feeling a certain way. So that's why like I never dress like two occasions. Like I never feel over or underdressed because I'm just wearing what I feel. So
for you, fashion and those type of things were less of I'm wearing certain pieces to look presentable or to like go to a specific event or because it's a certain like time of the day or because I'm going, and more so a self-expression.
Yeah, literally, because like there will be times like let's say I could come to the studio like at night, let's say like after work and after a workout, it's like 11:30. Like I know I'm not gonna see anybody, but I'll just be like, hey, I really want to wear this outfit today. I feel like this will look cool, so I'll throw it on. I'll come to the studio, look in the mirror, I'll feel great, and then sit down and get to work. So it's just like I feel like when you like think about it this way, like have you ever had a moment where there's something you want to wear and you envision it a certain way, and when you put it on, it fits exactly how you wanted it to? And think about that feeling.
Being short, that usually doesn't happen, but the times that it does, it's great.
It's great, right?
But like, which is really rare for me.
Yeah.
But yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so just take that and just like multiply it on like every aspect. So it's like there's certain things I wear. Let's say like I like the way this top like stops right here, or I like the way this jacket is a little wider on the shoulders, or I like the way that when I wear these pants and I sag a little, they drop and they overshadow my shoes a bit. Like I just feel like there's so many things, like when you really break fashion down, like it's really simple though. Like I feel like people try to make fashion like this super like complex like insider's club, and it's really not that deep at all. Well, at least for me, I try to look at it like a little kid, like the way like, because I have a young nephew, so I like have the luxury of watching him grow and seeing like the way he like consumes things and like his perspective, and it's like everything is so simple. Like like the other day we had an argument because he didn't want the Tyson chicken nuggets because they weren't shaped like animals. And like that's just his MO, So it's just like things are that simple. Like I don't want these pants because they don't fit right on my shoes, Or I really love this shirt and I'll wear it every day because it just makes me feel great,
Actually, you know what? This wasn't a planned question, but I do want to ask you about this. The idea of fashion and clothing as like a shield, as armor, as a costume.
Yeah.
Because I think you're tapping into something that's really interesting, and I just want to get your thoughts on that. Have you ever thought about it that way? Or if not, have you ever reflected on that and go like, I wonder if certain people dress that way because it's armor or they feel like they have to, depending on the situation.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think people use it to build a personality rather than their personality building the clothes they wear, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like, for example, like you see me around, you see I wear a lot of colors and my personality reflects that, right? But at times, if you notice, I'm always wearing something super colorful, but then everything else is super calm and plain to balance it out. And that's like literally a ideology for my personality. Like there's moments where like I'm super bubbly and it depends on the situation, but at most points, especially if you don't know me, I just look like that calm guy, like I could be at a party or something, I'll just there like not talking to anybody. It's not anything against anyone, but that's just my personality. Like at times, especially if I don't know everyone there, I just don't feel comfortable to speak. But then sometimes, let's say you see me at like a stay silent party or something, you're like, wow, this guy's always like super energetic. But that's because in that environment, everyone feels like family, So it's just, everything is based on environment. So like,
that's the one thing I tell everybody about stay silent, especially like if I take somebody to an event and they've never been to one, I'm like, no, you're gonna feel like it's like friends and family.
Yeah, it's literally a family affair. Like everything just feels supernatural. It's not forced, and I feel like that's how I dress. Like it's never forced. Everything just looks right. And that's not like even saying that like, I dress perfectly or whatever. I found a niche of the way I dress for everything to just look effortless because I don't put much thought into getting dressed,
So actually it brings up another interesting side question.
Yeah.
In the sense that you were talking about personality, like dictating what you wear, not what you wear, dictating personality.
Yeah.
Do you think that was all like, cause I wonder if you agree or disagree with this. Like, it seems like now certain people's personality is wrapped up in the brands they buy and wear.
Yes.
I'm not here to say, and like, do you think that that's good? If that's bad, is it kind of just is? Because like people are finding communities in that sense too, which I think it's great. It's great to have a community, but when your personality and your identity is wrapped up around in the items you buy or like the brands that you wear, It's like where does you and the brand end, and then what happens if the brand does something like
that you don't
agree with, and like so like what is. Do you think that's a more recent phenomenon, or do you think that's always been like that? We're seeing it more because we have access to information.
Media. Yeah. The weird thing about social media is that you're seeing more people unintentionally than we've ever seen ever. You know, and I think they actually have like memes about that on like certain like fashion pages about like I saw one joke one of my friends put in a group chat. I was like, okay, you go to a party, would you rather talk to A, B, or C? And it's like A had like a certain like it will name certain brands, like certain shoes, certain top, like, and they're associating certain personalities with these brands. And more times than not, they're
like
true.
Those starter pack memes.
Yes, exactly those. And yeah, I hate when people like for example, like the worst, and you know, no one get offended, but I think like one of the worst like subgenre like fashion groups is people that wear Rick Owens. Like everyone that wears Rick Owens just swears that they're just like these fashion gods. And I'm like, it's not that deep. Like Rick is cool, I guess, you know, like don't get me wrong. Like I love Rick Owens as much as the next guy. Hopefully Rick doesn't hear this and sue us or anything.
Or he does, and it just gets us both instant notoriety. So actually, Rick, if anybody at Rick Owens hears this, if this somehow gets to them, don't take on Albert, but feel free to sue the crap out of me. I need the I need the lawsuit. So feel free to Rick Owens, if this ever gets back to you, sue me into oblivion. I don't have much to get, you know, you're not going to get much from me anyway, but I'm just saying, I need the notoriety. I need the headlines. So Rick, go for it.
Whatever works, right? But yeah, I'm sure he's even aware of, you know, the people that wear his clothes, because when you look at his newer collections, it's literally just remixes in different colors and of the same clothes he's made before. You know, there's not too many new ideas coming from that fashion house. And I just think, when people associate brands with their personality too much, it's boring. You know, it's predictable. Like, I already know what you're going to wear every day. But then again, like, it works for some people, you know, like how we were just talking about, like, Pharrell and Chad. Like, when you think about someone like Pharrell and you associate, like, Bape and, like, Human Made and, like certain brands to him, you know, like Chanel. And I'm like, wow, that is like dope. You know, it works for some people. Like how Kanye had his whole polo thing for a while, it works. But when other people like give a negative connotation to a brand because they don't have any personality, they're not accentuating the brand, if that makes sense. Like the clothes are wearing them. And that's my number one pet peeve, is when people allow the clothes to wear them. They only buy things because everyone else likes it. They know if they buy this shirt, then, you know, they kind of fit into this mold. And I think fashion, like I said before, fashion has to be about expression. You know, like, for example, like someone like super cool and that I look up to is Sudi. Like every time I see him, I compliment what he's wearing, because I know when I tell him I like this piece, he's going to tell me about it. He can tell me the exact storyline, what country it's from, probably who the artisan was. Like, it's so, like, I love that. You know, like when you could tell someone put so much care into the products they're buying. Like, I don't know. It's just different.
Funny enough, I bought somewhat similar shirts from you and Sudi.
Yeah.
Which we're going to get into that in a bit. That's going to be further down the line. And also, if you don't know who Sudi is, the Sudi belly art episode, go listen to this one first, but then go check that one out.
They got to listen to this one to get to that one.
Yeah, shameless self-promotion, folks. I'm always doing it. Again, Rick Owens, sue me. Thank you. I'm going to push that now.
Yeah.
Rick
Owens, sue me.
I'm literally gonna like get a Rick Owens t-shirt and just like put in crappy white paint on it. Rick Owens, please sue me. And just make every Rick Owens person mad on Reddit and Instagram and just piss them off.
You have to do it. You have to go,
I think I need to do this now.
You got to go on the Reddit pages and see how people talk about Rick. Like, it's so crazy.
Like talk about his sneakers and just be like, aren't those just dunks? And you're like, like
I'm telling you, like, it's like Rick Owens fans are the worst. I'm sorry. If that's your favorite designer, I honestly hope you get offended. Honestly. I hope you listen to this and get really mad.
This is where the podcast got, like, everybody's going to look back and go, so this is when it got controversial. This is when it got interesting.
Hey, man, because, you know, some people say Rick. I say Margiela is the greatest designer of all time. But, hey, some people say Raph. Some people say Rick. I say it's Margiela. But, hey, that's neither here nor there.
I've got some different. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Because I only need so much controversy. So anyway, just enough so I can get some notoriety.
Yeah.
So what? So you're introduced into certain cultures, subcultures,
Yeah.
specifically fashion,
Yeah.
and the gateway drug of that being sneakers, which is interesting.
100%.
What were the moment? Because describe to me that was there a singular moment? Or was there moments? Was it an evolution of going from? Because a lot of people you go on Instagram, like there's you can throw a rock in the virtual pool of Instagram and or Twitter or TikTok and hit and hit like a fashion influencer or enthusiast. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like what you like, but there is a difference between being a fan of something and being into something, and then going from that to like I'm going to now participate. Not just from an appreciative standpoint, but I'm going to now create something and put it out into the world. Can you describe a moment or moments or an evolution of like where that thinking started and like you started to change from person who appreciates and wears to person who now wants to create?
Yeah. So great question, by the way. I've never thought about that. I guess, there was just a lot of moments. I mean, when I was younger, like I said, like I was always seeing these things and I was just so fascinated, but there wasn't really like everybody was like they all knew each other, like for example, like Kanye came up through like Jay-Z, like he got signed to Rockefeller, like things of that nature. So it's like all these artists, like I never thought it was possible to live in an era where it's like this small kid from Providence could possibly get his clothes on X person that lives in LA, or this person is at a concert wearing my pieces. Like that wasn't possible, like let's say a decade ago, So it really took like guys like Virgil coming up and like letting me see that like, hey, like you can do this,
Not to cut you off, but when you say not possible, do you mean not possible from like a infrastructure standpoint, like having access to materials and being able to like sell things online, or was it not possible in the sense of hopefully I frame this correctly, because let's be honest, up until recently, up until guys like Virgil, may he rest in peace, you saw a lot of designers will have a certain color, and that color was usually white, European white, but white.
100%.
So, like, did that play into it as well? Like, I just wanted you to, I just want you to define what you mean by like, hey, like it couldn't be done 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole bunch of isms that we could go into, but I mean, a young African American kid from the smallest state in the freaking country, in an industry that's basically run by Europe, so. No, it just didn't seem like I didn't even know where the entry point was. There was no door for me to visualize, for me to even walk through. It's just, I mean, especially everything that wasn't from Europe came from New York. And like at the time I was too young to like be going back and forth to New York. I didn't really know that many people from New York at the time. So it just didn't seem like something that I could do. It didn't seem achievable. And I wasn't even thinking like that far, like I had this like strong love for fashion, but at the time, like when I was young, I wasn't really thinking like, hey, I want to be a designer. Well, yes and no. I kind of always knew I wanted to work in fashion. I just wasn't sure. So back to your earlier question, when you said like, it appeared like that was more of like a model or like trying to become an influencer, so to say. That's kind of what it was, because I was looking for like some sort of like adjacency. Like I kind of wanted to use leverage, So I was like, okay, if I blow up as a model, then I'm already in the industry and I have like some sort of notoriety, then I could start this fashion brand.
You would have the connections and the leverage to then use those connections and that leverage then to talk to people that have the access to the manufacturing, the origin or the sale or whatever you needed to make the thing a reality.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, everything is about access, and I think about leverage a lot. I think one of the most important like quotes I've ever heard was that the person that started McDonald's was never into fast food. He was a real estater. So it's like,
well, that's how they make their money. They don't make their money off the burgers. Like they make their money off the real estate.
Exactly.
McDonald's is a real estate company. It's not a food company.
Exactly. So think about how crazy that is. The number one fast food restaurant in the world is not even was not even started on the idea of being a fast food restaurant.
It's funny you mentioned that head of Best Buy. I mean, back when they were like dominating, they said like somebody asked him, oh, like, why did you want to start like electronics?
Yeah.
Like selling electronics. He's like, we don't sell electronics. It's like, what the hell do you sell? He's like, we sell real estate in the sense of our shelves and who we pick to put in there. He's like, we're not selling electronics. We're selling real estate.
Yeah.
And these people who make electronics
Are
now
putting,
that got blown up later on, obviously, with Amazon and stuff. But at the time, and so it's interesting that access and leverage and what you think is one thing, it's really they're making money another way.
Yeah, because honestly, like subconsciously, I kind of did the same thing. Like I just, like, you know, just continued. Well, yeah, I'll say continue to like just dress well, and that kind of became like a notion of like who I am, you know. So like people would associate like fashion with me already. So of course it would make sense for me to streamline into a designer. So people like didn't always know that that was my plan, but when they saw me doing the modeling thing, or they saw me like, you know, buying certain pieces or dressing a certain way, when I started making my own clothes, it made sense. You know, people were telling me like, oh, it's just a matter of time. And it's like, it's not like I sat back and had like this huge big picture moment, but I just, at some point, I think especially when I was in college, I was like, all right, like, how am I going to get access to certain people? How am I going to be able to talk to certain people? How am I going to get in these rooms? And honestly, it was through like modeling. Like, I didn't like take the credit. And it's so funny because at the time, like, I actually had like agencies and stuff that wanted to sign me, but it's crazy. And Jabron would tell you this, like, Jabron and I had to sit down. Like, we probably sat down for like 2 hours because Jabron was like, a lot of people may not know, but he was like a super like accomplished model back in the day.
Check out the Jabron episode after this one.
No,
again, another
really,
shameless self-promotion.
Really talented guy. So he was like my mentor at the time when I was trying to get into the modeling thing. And what had happened was he was like, dude, you got to cut your goatee. Like at the time I had like a really long goatee when I was in college. Like I had the bone structure, everything slim, everything was on point. He was like, bro, you got to cut your goatee. I was like, dude, like I've been growing this for a while. Like I'm not trying to cut it. Like, is there any way around this? He was like, when you get in the industry, you could do whatever you want with your facial hair because you'll already be that model that's known for whatever, right? But in the beginning, to shoot these pictures that we're going to submit to the agencies, you have to cut your goatee. I was like, bro, I'm not doing it. So I ended up like shaving it a little bit. I sent him a picture. He was like, yeah, that looks nice, but bro, you got it. Like, what are you doing? Go, like, your face needs to be bald. And I just refused to do it. I don't know why. I didn't see the bigger picture vision. But yeah, so, you know, modeling didn't go that far. I kind of fumbled on that. But I still ended up modeling like a lot for like local brands and stuff. And, you know, that as well as like my personal style helped me like network with a lot of people, and then it just everything became shameless, you know, like so that's kind of what it was.
Now, why making your own pieces, and why not, you know, taking the modeling further, or why not, I don't know, being a fashion writer or a stylist, or maybe working for another company, or you know, or I know blogging like had its people still blog, but it's like in a different form now. Like the, you know, the blog era, why not join that? Or working for a Karma Loop, you know, or something of that nature. What led you, or did you try those things? I'm just curious as to like what led you to this one path of making your own pieces versus, you know, if you want to get in the industry, it's because there are different ways to do it rather than just being on the design end of things.
So I did, I had a job at Eblin's, which is like a well-known sneaker store out here. So I did that for a little bit. That was fun. I also worked at Nike for a bit, and I actually did really well at Nike. I was at a point thinking of moving up to corporate because they wanted me to like start to like position myself for like managerial positions and stuff, because like obviously I was like super knowledgeable about everything Nike, and you know, like I told you before, that was due to like growing up in the culture, knowing everything just about everything, you know, whereas like some of the managers over there, they come from like, whether it's like a schooling background in like marketing or like in business, and they're managing this store and they're getting acquainted to the Nike products in that aspect for the first time. Whereas like being the kid that grew up on Nike and then working at Nike, like you could see the difference when I'm talking to consumers versus somebody that's just learning about Nike, you know? So, but those experiences gave me a lot of insight on the business aspect of fashion, because that's probably something we'll speak more on later, but the
Oh
business.
yeah, well, we're gonna get into that.
Yeah, because the business aspect of fashion is so hard. Like market, and I'm still struggling with it. Honestly, it's a learning curve that I'm trying to battle every day. But I'm getting a little better. And you guys will see. I'm gonna start posting more content, and I'll speak more on that in here. But yeah, the reason why I decided I wanted to be a designer, honestly, there's just certain things that I felt like I wanted to see, or I wanted, to be more accessible to those around me, that I felt like I needed to be the one to bring X product here, or, to create such product to represent something. Whereas like, there's just certain things I saw, or I more so felt were missing, and yeah, I just felt like the way like I view the world and my like perspective on fashion and stuff, I feel like I have a story to tell and I have something to contribute,
So now this leads to your brand,
Yeah.
your creation, which is Pour La Ville,
Yes, sir.
which translates to for the city.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Correct. How did you come up with that name? Was that like the name, or did you have a couple other names you were toying around with?
Yeah,
like what made you think of that?
So I actually had this like super like movie moment where I actually went. So I was in college. It was a Halloween party. This was when Stay Silent was still at Aurora. So I went. R.I.P. Aurora, by the way.
Oh yeah, that place was great, but I think it never. Just a brief aside, I think it never knew what it wanted to be. Like one night, I remember like there was like shadow puppets, and the next night there was like a sludge metal band, and then the next night you'd have like Stay Silent there,
party,
and it could never establish like what
their
the heck
identity.
Yeah, of like, oh, that's what to expect.
Yeah.
Like literally, I'm not kidding, folks. There was like shadow puppets one night, and then Stay Silent the next, which is.
I think I had this conversation with Sabrina one time actually, so that's funny. And that was probably more of like an ownership issue, but that's another.
Yeah, that's a whole
different.
Heads of Aurora, feel free to sue me, and then can I get you on the show?
Yo, please, nobody sue Jason. He's a great guy. Please.
Yeah, no, or I mean, don't sue me to the point where it puts me in the point. But like, I need the headlines.
We should make some Sue Jason merch. That would actually be fire.
Please sue Jason.
No, I'm telling you, that would be fire.
But it would be. But I feel like we'd have to either put my last name or like Jason of Creative Capital Show in little letters, because we don't want to get J.
There's so many.
Yeah,
J's
like there's a lot of J's in this city, and like doing good work that don't want to get sued. But me, go for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you had a movie moment.
Yeah, so I went to Aurora for the Bounce House, which was the Halloween edition, and I had met this photographer. Her name was Lee. She moved to Korea, by the way. She's doing great things. Shout out to Lee. If you listen to this, you changed my life that night. So I don't know what it was that made her come up to me. But she came up to my friend and I, and she was like, "Hey, like, who are you? What do you do?" Oh, she's a photographer, so obviously she came up to me and she asked if she could take our picture. I think that's where it went, and then we just started having this conversation. It was like, "Hey, who are you? What do you do?" Et cetera, et cetera. And I told her like, I think I said I wanted to be a designer. She said something along the lines like, "No, there's no wanting to be. Like, either you are or you're not." And that was a great point. And then she asked me a little bit about the brand, what I wanted to do, and she just like went on this spiel about like brand identity, and she started giving me like examples about like certain ideologies like Noah, Supreme, APC, Agni, et cetera, and she was like, you have to build like an ideology for your brand. Like the brand has to stand for something, whether it's consciously or subconsciously.
It needs a story.
Exactly. Like you can't just put a brand out, like, you know what I'm saying? You can't just start from scratch and just put a brand out and just like have it be that brand. Like I'm not like a celebrity. So people have to feel like they're aligning with the brand in some way, So at the time, I believe the name of my brand was Sanctified PVD. And I don't remember why I chose that brand. Probably like some religious reason. But I had made like some t-shirts in high school and they were cool. I was actually going to start the brand with my friend Jesse, but at the time we didn't have access to any resources. So that kind of never went anywhere, which is cool though. Like I have one of those like trial and error like stories where like I've been like starting brands since like middle school, and like we always like got the website started, like did things, and we just never were able to take it anywhere until this point where, now I have my brand now. I was finally able to get off the ground. But back to Lee. So yeah, She was like, no, like you need to have an ideology. So literally when I got back to my dorm that night at URI, like I was just brainstorming. So like 3 a.m, I was like, yo, my brain needs to stand for something, stand for something, stand for something. And I was like, who am I doing it for and why? And I was like, I'm doing it for the city. And so when you hear like the translation of POV, by the way, a lot of people do refer to the brand POV. So if I say POV, I'm referring to Pour La Ville. So I was like, what did I feel like was missing? Because, seeing what everyone around me wore was mainly streetwear. Everybody was into Supreme. Everybody was into Babe. Everybody was into these things, right? But like, there wasn't necessarily any spaces where like we had like that luxury brand, right? We didn't we have like J. Crew, or we had Nordstrom, like Macy's, you could get like Polo, but like there was nowhere I could get pieces. Like there was nowhere I could go and get like.
Could it be
CDG.
fair that you could get those things online though, or just go up to Boston, like go to like a Riccardi,
yeah,
like which is felt like, I mean, for anybody that doesn't know New England geography, Providence to Boston is like a 1 hour train ride, car ride,
at all. So yeah,
3 hours to New York. So
yeah, in all fairness, yeah, you could go to other cities, but why would you want to do that? Why are we?
Good point.
Yeah, like why couldn't we develop something that would help represent our city? So I've always had like this big picture, like I guess story, quote unquote, that like I wanted POV. It's some like running joke that I always say to my friends, but literally every day I always tell them like, hey, like I'm gonna have Anna Wintour in Providence one time. Like I want POV to get to the point where it's like we're so big that like they put on the CFDA calendar for Fashion Week like, oh, POV is doing the show in Providence, and people come here. Like the whole idea of POV is to expose the world to what we have to offer, rather than us always looking at other cities and stuff, especially in culture and fashion, and like trying to adapt to them. Like I feel like we have our own wave, and I've just always had this idea of, because like I feel like what my friends and stuff do is like so significant, and I feel like we're the creative capital for a reason. So why?
Hence the name of this show.
Exactly. So I always felt like, okay, for the city, like let's say I stick my neck out and let's say, fingers crossed, I'm that big brand that blows up. Now I just created a door for so many people to walk through, and that's literally what it is,
Again, also why this show exists from at least the tactical perspective. Because everybody talks about the sexy stuff, but not many people are going to talk about the tactical stuff, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But this brings up two interesting questions I have.
Yes.
One, you were mentioning, the idea of streetwear and things like that and access. What now in terms of access, right? It is easier from an access standpoint, especially now, but even 10 years ago, that you could design a graphic, put it, find blank tees, find somebody to screen print it, or if you're really tight on cash, you could do the iron-on thing, right?
Heat press.
And heat press, things of that nature, and then put it out there. And, it seemed like there was a time during like the blog era where like there was like a brand every 5 minutes doing like the whole t-shirt, hoodie, like t-shirt, hoodie, maybe a jacket, t-shirt, hoodie, maybe a jacket, and like some hats.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad way to start out. And it's not a bad way. And like, and especially if you're good at it, I mean, there are brands that are based on that.
Yeah.
What made you not want to go that route? Because especially when you talk about access, like what made you go like I'm not going to do the I know you say you did t-shirts years ago, but like what made you go, no, I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to do more cut and sew. I am going to do more luxury things. Like what made you not do the whole graphic on t-shirt, graphic on hoodie route?
So honestly, like I feel like more so it's just what I like, and I just wanted to come from a genuine place whenever I create. So I create things that, you could typically see me wearing. Like I don't want to necessarily call it like a uniform, but just like things that you could see me moving in everyday life. And I just feel like if I'm trying to create this thing that I feel is quote unquote hasn't necessarily been done out here, like there needs to be something that gives people like that backing. Like people are calling me a luxury brand from the bat because my first like a lot of people's first introduction to me was my silk button up. right? So when people see that and they're like, oh, that's PLV, and they're associating it instantly like, oh, that's a luxury brand. That's a silk shirt, you know? Whereas like if I started with a t-shirt, people would be like, okay, that's cool. Albert started a brand, but what else? You know, like I just felt like
Like, what have you done for me lately?
exactly, right? So starting with the t-shirts was like cool. Like you could, you know, I could probably design like a kick-ass t-shirt. Like my first few t-shirts were really cool. They did well. But I just felt like people wanted more, you know, like people expect I don't really want to fall into the notion of like expectations, but like just like based on, you know, how I dress and stuff, people had like a certain expectation, like, okay, I'm expecting that from this guy. Like I want him to take it there, you know, like what they envisioned for me and my brand. And but yeah, I mean, in short, I just didn't feel fulfilled doing t-shirts. I just felt like there was we could take it so much further, you know, like, and it's funny because out here, like a lot of people don't like dressing up is what I've noticed, right? So like a lot of times like people will wear the PLV, like at first when I first dropped that black silk button up, like people would only wear it to like special occasions, right? But then what started happening, and this is exactly what I want to happen. It was literally my plan. Is that people started, you know, like I said, creating that uniform. Like people just, I'd see people wearing the PLV shirt like continuously, right? Like whether it was like a night out or like let's say they're wearing it to work or like something important. Like they started like subconsciously associating that PLV shirt with like a special moment, right? Like there's a running joke that like you can't go on vacation without a PLV shirt because like the amount of like pictures I have, like if you go on the Instagram, you look at like the tag pictures, like a good 90% are people wearing that shirt on vacation, right? So it's like people are subconsciously associating this shirt with like whatever special moment it is, right? And that's important because a lot of people, they don't realize they're doing it, but they are. You know, like for example, like when you think of like heirlooms and stuff, let's say you had like a bracelet and I ask you about it and you're like, oh yeah, this is a really special bracelet. My grandmother gave it to me and she got it from her mother who wore it, let's say when they were migrating from Italy, right? So now every time you wear that bracelet, it's subconsciously like you're thinking about the origin, right? So now every time you wear this black silk button up, you're like, wow, I was wearing that shirt on vacation. I felt great. And that's a experience and a feeling you're associating with the brand. So all in all, what I'll say is, like I mentioned earlier, I felt there was a need for something. I felt like I wanted to see people do more. I felt like a lot of people weren't dressing up as much. You know, I don't want to say people were dressing like lazy, but they were just dressing very comfortably. And I felt like, you know, if I came and, you know, I dropped these button ups, it would kind of give people a reason to dress up more, you know? And that's kind of what I've started seeing happening. And then it can also be like an entry level thing. Maybe people are now being exposed to materials and stuff they didn't necessarily care for before or even know about. And then from there on, it opens their eyes to other brands, you know? So, yeah, that's kind of the objective.
So almost like sneakers were the gateway drug into all these different cultures and fashion for you.
Exactly.
Maybe your piece can be the gateway drug into things like luxury.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny though because so PLV is actually like the entire ideology behind PLV is subjective luxury, right? So when you think about like the names of like the collections I'm dropping, right? So one of the names is like Paradise is Where You Are. And it's like this double entendre for like you can be on vacation, right? And that's your paradise. But you can also be at home, right? And that could be your paradise as well. Like luxury is something that like these big brands and stuff have thrown at us and they've made us think there's certain things that you have to associate with luxury, but luxury is actually truly subjective. Like the feeling I get when I wake up in the morning and I can stretch and go get a smoothie and come to the studio, that's luxurious to me, right? So it's for you to define. And I feel like us being from Rhode Island and Providence and, you know, a lot of people not necessarily appreciating us yet, that's really a luxury in itself because we're really the best kept secret right now, you know? And I think that, like, for example, like I'm using PLV to showcase a lot of things that people, let's say, have not consciously thought of as luxury, but now, with POV, they can kind of associate it. So, for example, the Renaissance shirt, how many of us have been going to Waterfire since we were children? Probably never thought much of it, right? But when I drop the shirt and you see it in that light, now you're like, whoa, this is crazy. And you think about this thing that's essentially been in our backyard for a couple of decades that let's say you never really thought of that much, but now you're really thinking about like, wow, we really have access to gondolas at any time in season, right? That like not everybody could say that. So
not every city's got a river running in the middle of it.
Exactly, right? So it's these things that you're able to define the luxury for yourself, and that's all I'm trying to do here.
A clear desire makes a clear story. Albert's movie-like moment in a nightclub, which later led to the creation of his brand, is an interesting one. It showed him the importance of knowing your brand's story and what your brand stands for. But what I think is equally important is that this story highlights the need to have clarity in your desire. What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? The first step to creating your brand story, to know what your brand actually stands for, is to be clear about what you want. When you have the self-awareness and the honesty to communicate your desire, then the story and values behind your brand will become clear. So, I was going to ask this question later, but you already answered how you define luxury. So I want to ask a sub-question to that. Yeah. Actually, I got two sub-questions to that. One, start with this one. Do you think luxury and high price are always or should be intrinsically tied to each other? Because I've bought stuff that's expensive that wasn't luxury at all.
Exactly.
And then there's some stuff that like is luxury from like it's very high quality, but because it's not from a certain brand or a certain house, people wouldn't define that as luxury or associate that.
Yeah.
So do you think that pricing and like the way things are priced kind of messes with the definition sometimes?
I 100% do. And it's another thing about like, we had this discussion earlier about like names, like people would associate, for example, like there's a lot of like brands that have blown up in the recent years that like, they're just expensive, but like at the end of the day, it's just a graphic tee, like a screen printed, like simple graphic tee. Is nothing.
And like, even the blank may not be of high quality,
exactly.
but they'll charge out the
500, 600, yeah, because like celebrities, A-listers wear it. So it's like I hate that luxury is sometimes associated with price, but at the same time, when you look at it from like a niche perspective, let's like one of my friends, Anthony, is really into furniture, right? So he'll show me these like $3,000-$4,000 like mini like Japanese couches, and he's like going crazy over it. I'm like, bro, like I don't get the hype, but I love seeing how happy you get over this thing, right? So I think it's one of those things where it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like there are some things that are super overpriced, but at the same time, there are things that are priced because of the process, right?
And we're gonna get into that in a bit too.
So like certain designers, like they hand quill or hand make everything. It's one of ones essentially, right? So the time, like a lot of things go into price, right? Let's say the access, the demand, the time, the brand itself, the way they market it. But there definitely are things that are overpriced. But again, like I said, there are some things that deserve to be priced that way. But me coming up as a young designer, I was trying to like learn, how do I associate my brand with luxury, right? Do I charge these people around me out the a-hole? I was like, that doesn't really make sense, because me being someone that appreciates both sides, I hold the vintage items in my closet that I've thrifted or bought from Cured at the same level as some of my favorite designer pieces, So it's like, it has to be something more than just the price. It's either the quality or it's the process or it's the design.
Or the story behind the piece.
Exactly. So I think to answer your question with one like simple line, yeah, it sucks when brands take advantage of, their name and they charge excessively, but it's also beautiful when brands can use their name to charge because of, like you rightly said, the story behind the piece or how much time it took or, you know, the design. Like if it's a really dope, intricate design, charge whatever you want. Because at the end of the day, like there's levels to this in fashion, right? So what you can appreciate something and leave it at that. You don't have to buy everything you like, you know? If it's, and I don't know, it's tough with fashion. Like it's one of those things where it's like it's kind of for everybody, but it's kind of not for everybody. But that's what every vice, you know, like some people appreciate things to another level and they're willing to spend a lot more on it as opposed to the average person. But just for me personally, like I feel like I price things at a point where you're gonna appreciate them because it's not super cheap, right? But at the same time, it's more affordable than some of the brands it would be next to on racks. If that's a good way to answer it.
So this leads to two more interesting questions I have before we get into like the process-based stuff or the more tactical operational stuff.
Yeah.
Could you define, because your brand on the About page, it states that it's ready-to-wear luxury. And, you know, you were talking about when it comes to pricing, sometimes some of these designers are doing like one-of-ones, which would be more couture if I'm using the term correctly.
Yes.
Can you define what couture is? Can you define what ready-to-wear is? And then can you answer why you went more ready-to-wear route rather than the couture route?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, couture, with a lot of brands, a lot of that stuff is more so. Couture in fashion is actually, I don't want to say like it's a fundraiser, but like you don't really make any money from the couture. Like those,
it's a loss leader at a lot of fashion houses. They make money on the smaller accessories and things. Whereas the couture gets the notoriety on the runway, but that's more like it's like promotion. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. You spend all this money to do this show, but you're not necessarily making any of it back. And there's so many like rules for you to qualify to even do a couture show. It's so weird, but that's a whole different tangent. Yeah, there's a lot of politics in fashion. People don't even know. Like LVMH and I'm not trying to get sued here. But
LVMH, feel free.
I don't know if we want to mess with those guys.
I'm gonna grab a Louis Vuitton shirt. I'm gonna grab all these high end shirts and just write in bad paint. Please sue me, whatever.
Nah, Bernard scares me. I don't think I want to mess with Bernard. But y'all, hey, I'm just
Bernard. If you somehow hear this, don't sue out, but sue me. I need the headlines.
We're making the Sue Jason merch. I'm telling you,
we really are. We're just gonna grab vintage LV and Rick Owens pieces, and we're just gonna paint with like crink markers. Yeah. Please sue me.
But the reason why I went more ready to wear as opposed to couture is simply like I don't wear couture. You know, nobody around me wears couture, so it just wouldn't make sense. Like I have runway pieces in my closet, but that's a lot different from couture. You know, like those aren't things that you're wearing every day.
So that wouldn't be defined as ready to wear.
No, not even remotely close. Like if you look at like Comme des Garçons, like couture and stuff, like you can't wear those pieces anywhere except for like Met Gala or something.
But to be fair, Comme is like such a huge thing where I feel like I don't think people realize that there's like 7 to 10 sub labels and probably more in its history.
People are probably
like there's like CDG unaware. Shirt and then there's like home, you know CDG Man and Play. Then there's CDG Home and then there's Play and then there's the CDG shirt line and there was like another sub label which those are ready to wear.
Yeah. Honestly, CDG is probably in my personal opinion probably one of the best brands of all time. Like conceptually like down to the wire like probably one of the biggest brands of all time too. And it's funny though because a lot of people don't, like you mentioned, like a lot of people don't even really know what Comme des Garçons is. They just recognize Play, you know, because like
the heart logo and everything.
So a lot of people don't even know about the brand, but when you really like look into what CDG truly is, it's such a fire brand. It's crazy. That's one of my inspirations as well. But so I just decided to go the ready wear route because, like you said, like nobody around me is wearing.
Can you give just a quick definition of what ready to wear is in case somebody's listening to this just doesn't understand the difference? Yeah.
So and another thing too. So I guess I'll put it this way for you. So let's say you're watching, like let's say Louis Vuitton fashion show, right? Spring summer 23. So let's say they do a show of like 50 to 100 looks. So the ready-to-wear pieces are the ones that are already in stores, or you could purchase them from the website. And then there's runway pieces. So the runway pieces you could only get at like certain like boutiques, or like usually the way it works is like if you have like a friend at the brand, or like stylists could do polls. Typically the way it works, they'll do polls for like Vogue covers or like promotional stuff for like artists or like actors and things of that nature. And then usually they give the clothes back. But sometimes, it gets finessed somewhere in between, and runway pieces leak, but they're very rare, right? And then ready to wear, like I said, is just the stuff that's on racks, like readily available at stores. So like stores such as Riccardi's, as we mentioned earlier, Maxfield, Saks Fifth, what's another one, Bloomingdale's. So just the stuff that you could like literally walk into the store and purchase is ready to wear. And those are the pieces that are usually like more consumable, right? The stuff that like, for a lot of these big fashion houses, the stuff that like will make them the money. So it's like the jeans, sweaters, hoodies, t-shirts, accessories are included, bags are included. Usually not anything too conceptual, just like simple pieces. What do you think? I'd say that's about it.
I would say I would say that's a pretty good definition. Yeah. My last question before we get into the tactical stuff is something you touched upon earlier, and we were talking about this before we even recorded the episode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference a couple of different episodes. Usually I do this for shameless self-promotion reasons, but this is actually to give this question some context. So this, you mentioned Providence being the best kept secret right now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, because I remember on the Gibran episode, Gibran said, we, and by we as in Providence, and I would say extend that out to Rhode Island as well, but really focusing on the city, Providence has always been here. It's always had creatives doing great work.
Yes.
Etc.
Yes.
And then you had Jay and Sabrina of Stay Silent recently, and they, they've said similar things on the episode I had, but they were on another podcast, and my apologies to whoever runs that podcast. I'm blanking on the name right now.
Rayel's Smooth Podcast.
Thank you. Okay. Yep. I was trying to remember the name and it wasn't coming to me. So thank you for that. Yeah. They mentioned on that podcast, and similar sentiment as on mine as well, that this idea of being humble from a city perspective, where it's like, we don't need to be humble anymore. It's not like, these other cities like in New York, like Boston, it's not like, hey, we're stepping to Big Brother, or this idea of Big Brother, Little Brother, Big Sister, Little Sister type thing. We're not stepping to Big Brother or Big Sister out of disrespect. It's that, and Sabrina, sorry if I'm paraphrasing you incorrectly here. It's not out of disrespect. It's like, we're at the top of our game right now.
Yeah. No, we're killing it.
And I would say that is a correct statement, but there's a weird double-edged sword there, because I feel like, me personally, we're at the top of our game on this level, but I feel like there's another top we have to get to, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like we're just getting started as far as,
definitely.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're not even near, like, we're at the top of this current station, but I feel like there's a whole other like top that like we're just things are just getting started, I guess. In a good way. Like, I get the top of the game comment. So, but I feel like it's like top of the game in one way, but like things are just starting in the sense of like almost moving into like, all right, now, like, hey, we hit these goals.
Yeah. So
now what's next?
Yeah.
What, it seems like there's this certain type of feeling, and as somebody, I'm going to date myself here. I'm in my mid-30s. So somebody who's been around Providence for a minute, I've seen the change. And again, I agree with Gibran that, I agree with both of these sentiments at the same time. I agree with Gibran that we've always had creatives killing it and doing great work. But I also agree with the, Sabrina's, Jay and Sabrina's sentiment of Providence being at the top of their game right now. And I agree with your sentiment at the same time. So it's almost seems like these three opinions are competing, but I don't think they are, of being the best kept secret.
Yeah.
What do you think has been contributing? Because it seems like I'm having a hard time defining it. I've lived in the city for pretty much all my life.
Yeah.
There's a different type of feeling now.
Yeah.
There's just a different type of feeling. There's a different type of energy. What do you think has led to that? And what do you think has led to that? And what do you think makes Providence stand out as a city?
Well, so I think, first of all, the most important thing is the strength in numbers right now is crazy. right? So when you think about like different industries that we're dominating in right now, so we were talking prior to the podcast, I was telling him about my friend Wango. Shout out to Where's Wango on everything. For example, he's a writer, right? And he's the first person I've ever seen like take writing to the magnitude that he's taking it right now, right? He was part of Two Dope Boys. He currently writes for Up Rocks. Like he's interviewed like so many people. He's done a cover story, right? So when you think about something of that nature, he's super up in the industry, right? And when people ask him where he's from Providence, right? So that's one example. Then we have Jay and Sabrina have this this company that, you know, they have their own venue. They run monthly installments, right? But not only the parties, but people, you're wearing a PVD shirt right now, right? So people...
And I got the PVD hat.
Exactly. So they're also dominating in the merchandise field, right? And then also they're running this festival that's probably it is the biggest festival in New England. And they do it biannually, right?
If Jay and Sabrina hear this, can you make Holiday Trail? Can you make a winter version?
That would be crazy, but where would they put it?
Either a skating rink or Yawgoo Valley. Or you do it at the
What is Yawgoo Valley?
It's like a very tiny ski resort. But for skiing, it's not great. But for a party, it would be great.
But how would that work? We're not partying outdoors, right?
I mean, maybe you just get a bunch of heat lamps. It'd be kind of like that Naughty by Nature video where there's like people snowboarding and everybody was like partying outside in really crazy down jackets. I'm hoping that's
from a logistics point though. Is this possible? Like, are we able to party outside in the winter? Like, how does this work?
You get really, really... Listen, other ski resorts, I've seen this happen, up in like way colder temperatures, and people... I think if you just be like, there's going to be music and alcohol, but bundle up, I think people would make the trek.
So if you
just my own 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm probably thinking too hard about it, but I'm just thinking about like, imagine someone pulls up in this super like warm down feather jacket, right? But you know, alcohol warms your body, so it's just gonna be a bunch of really warm, sweaty people, and then they're gonna all get hypothermia because they're gonna take their jackets off, but it's still cold outside.
Or you do the water fire gala idea.
Indoor.
Or you do it indoor if the lodge of an area, which Yawgoo wouldn't be, but if the lodge of a ski resort is big enough, because some of those places do have event spaces, you do it
for
there.
A festival though, because their numbers are like what?
Yeah,
they do like 3,000 people, 3,500, 4,500.
Water fire building would probably be. Actually, that'd be cool. Anyway, yeah.
All right,
we got Holiday Trail.
Yeah, we got super off track, but that was a great off track though. But yeah, I think right now, we're just running it in so many different industries that like it's undeniable, right? Like people are just like, I don't know, like I think that's the simple way to put it. Like there's just so many industries that people are killing it in, and then, you know, people are finding out that we're from this place, Providence, and they look up and they see what's going on in Providence, where people either visit, they come here, and then, you know, it's just undeniable. Everybody I know that comes to Providence never leaves, you know, or they never want to leave. They come down here. The only thing that I've gotten complaints about...
That sounds like a horror movie, actually.
It's we come and we suck them in and they stay here.
No, I mean, we do have, what is it? Not Edgar Allan Poe. I think he does have some weird connection to Providence, but no, oh God, what the hell is that author's name now? And it's coming to me now. H.P. Lovecraft, who's a famous horror writer, has ties to Providence.
Never knew that.
So
That's
I mean,
crazy.
yeah.
Did you know Viola Davis was from Providence?
Yeah, she went to like high school here.
Yeah, she went to Central Falls High School. It's crazy. She did some crazy cover story. She actually put Central Falls in the caption. I was like, this is incredible. Like, people don't understand how significant that is, man. But yeah, like before, like, you know, we had like a couple like athletes and stuff that would make it out, right? Or like we would have like this one random person, or like, for example, like Joe Perez, right? He did really well. He does really well in the design industry, right? But that was like one person.
I think we can't discount, I think, food and drink here.
Okay.
Like food and the bars, I think, were like one of the first. Not to say that they were the ones that kickstarted everything, but I think it was one of the first like communities where, like, at least from my perspective, and anybody listening to this, feel free to disagree with me. At least from my perspective, where it was like the food and the drink scene became so strong and everybody was like starting to root for everybody that it became like undeniable. Like when you're getting like when you're a bartender here and then you move on and you literally end up becoming the head bartender at what that year was considered the best bar in the world. That's saying something.
Okay. That sounds very specific. So this actually happened.
Yeah, it was one of the bartenders at the Dorrance when the rest in peace to the Dorrance.
Yes.
When the Dorrance they had an all-star menu. Basically, it was like anybody who had come through the Dorrance that was a head bartender, they recreated their drinks for that week or something. So like there was like 4 cocktails, but one of the cocktails was done by, and I'm blanking on the gentleman's name right now. I'm horrible with names, but basically one of the cocktails, they had the gentleman's name, and then it had what bar that person is at now if they're still bartending, and that person was, I think it was at Dead Rabbit in New York, and
that's the biggest.
And that year, because there's a vote every year, but that year it was voted as the best bar in the world. So the fact that like the head bartender of the best bartender is a guy who got their start at the Dorrance in Providence.
So this leads me to asking you a question, right?
Okay.
So do you think that Providence is that place where, like you just said, people get their start? Is that what we're always going to be?
I was actually just about to ask you that same question and get your opinion on it, because that's I'm wondering. It makes me wonder.
It seems like that's our MO.
Are we gonna stay? Because like there are certain people who do stay, and we have institutions like Round School of Design.
Yeah.
We have culinary institutions like Johnson and Wales are attracting really good talent.
Yeah.
And then it's easier to start something here than it is in a Boston or New York because of like real estate prices and things like that. That might be changing soon because we got a lot of people from Boston, New York coming in now.
Yeah, guys, please stay where you're at, man. You don't want to move here.
So
please.
There's this idea of almost, it's like Providence, at least that I've noticed, more so in the food and drink and not with music and fashion, thankfully.
Yeah.
But who knows, that may change for the better or worse, depending on who knows what the future's going to hold. I hopefully it makes people stay. But the thing I noticed with food and drink is that a lot of people, it was almost like a Paw Sox to Red Sox. We don't even have the Paw Sox anymore, or Providence Bruins to Boston Bruins, where it's like Providence was the farm team, and then you move on to the majors, even though like the farm team was doing better than the major league counterpart. Yeah. Now, again, I only saw that with food and drink. I would not put that with music, design, or fashion.
Yeah.
But is that going to be the problem in the future? Like, are we going to get so well known that like these higher end brands, like you were talking about Anna Wintour coming?
Yeah.
What happens if we, it's the double-edged sword of like success, right? Like, what happens if we do get that notoriety, but then Anna Wintour or like or Bernard, if you listen to this again, sue me, but hire Albert. Like, what if they want to hire you and then they're pulling you out of Providence, and it's a brain drain, a talent drain?
But that would be so beautiful because
it'd be a good problem. It'd be a good problem.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, if I get that type of like leverage, if I get hired at LV or some big company, I'm bringing all my friends.
You're bringing the people who help get you to the dance, basically.
And that's what's gonna put the city on. I think that's the difference now. Is that before, like, we always had people, like Jabron said, we always had people killing it in the industry, but like it was just one person. They didn't have like that leverage to bring an entire team. Whereas like now, like I'm seeing, like, for example, my friend Elijah, shout out to him. He's I don't know if this is public information, so we might have to, I don't know what we're going to do with this part, but so he's actually actually not. Okay, yeah, just scratch everything I said. So shout out to my friend.
Never mind.
Yeah, shout out to my friend Elijah. He's Kenny Mason's manager, right? So, and Kenny Mason's like killing it right now as a musician. So, and Elijah actually started with Joe Perez. He was one of the designers at his company, and then he went on to do his own thing. I remember like when I started to see him like really break out. Like, he does like a bunch of like merch and like creative direction for like all types of artists. Like, the list is long. Young Nudie, Cousin Stiz, it goes on. Like, probably anyone you can name, right? But I'm seeing him and he's putting people in position. I'll see him like call on some of my other friends, ask them to do this, ask them to style this, ask them to do it. Like, he's even reached out to me like, yo, bro, you have any pieces for me? Like, like, we're going on tour. I would love if you wore this piece at the show, So it's just like we're in position now where we can bring people with us because we're getting leverage. Whereas I felt like before maybe we didn't have that, right? But now, like, there's so many people making it in these different industries that we're able to, like, I went to a Spotify panel and one important thing, I'm sorry, I don't remember the woman's name that was speaking, but she works at Spotify. This was years ago when I was in college. I actually went with Where's Nasty. I believe he was on the panel, if I'm not mistaken, or Sabrina was on the panel. But I lost my train of thought. So she was talking about horizontal networking, right? And I always thought about this. Like when we look in the industry and we think about like for example, like in rap, right? These rap groups, like for example, like ASAP Mob, right? Not everyone at ASAP Mob was a rapper, but everybody played a role. And I think we're starting to get in that position where it's like, okay, David Duke made it to the league, right? And then I also see FaZe, which is a brand that's very well known in Providence, and they're actually related, right? But if you don't know that, you see David wearing a lot of FaZe. And people that obviously aren't from Providence are gonna look into the brand because they see him wearing it every day, right? So it's just one of those things where it's like we're like a lot of shadow work is being done, right? Let's say my friend works in the music industry. For example, back to Elijah, he works in the music industry and he's doing a music video for, let's say, some big artist, right? And they need a stylist. Probably one of the first people he's going to think of are his friends, as long as they do good work, right? And that's how people get put on. So I think that's just what it is. Like, there's more opportunities. Because there's just a lot more of us killing it right now, and I think a lot more of us having leverage to actually put people in position. I think that's what it is. Like, yeah.
So now getting into the tactical, I want to talk about a particular piece because I remember this from the pop-up.
Yes, sir.
And staying on this is actually a planned transition. Usually I don't plan the transitions. This one I kind of planned.
Smooth.
The water fire piece, because you were talking about water fire. So the water fire button up. Can you talk about what led to the creation of that piece? What inspired you to do it? And also, was that part of a collection with a bigger message, or did that stand out as a singular piece and you designed the collection around that?
All right, great question. So I'll actually answer that backwards. So yes. So this was I actually mentioned this earlier. So there was this collection I wanted to do called Paradise is Where You Are. And it was actually, again, a double entendre. So I made that shirt to be like a vacation shirt, but also represent Providence. So it was one of those things where it's like, paradise is where you are, because we have this super luxurious thing in our backyard that maybe a lot of us took for granted. Whereas like a lot of people in other cities, like when they visit Providence, if they know about it, that's something they go and do, right? So I just feel like, and when you think about, on like a bigger scale, I get like a lot of like vintage references. Like I listen to like a lot of old school music, and I like just read a lot of like old magazines and like look at old posters and stuff. And you see these images of the gondoliers, right? You see these images and they're always associated with this like vacation, or like it's just super luxurious and just something that, you see in movies and stuff, right? But like I said, like a lot of us have
literally gondolas. Like I would think more like a Bond movie in some some like small town or city, and like in like halfway across the world. Like you wouldn't think it'd be in a New England city.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So it's just something that I really wanted to shine light to, and I had this idea for this collection that I mentioned, the Paradise is Where You Are collection, that I just wanted to highlight different places in Providence. But I realized that at the time I didn't have the resources or the time to make the entire collection. So I decided to just roll out these couple of shirts and then have that be the staple piece that we're going to kind of like form the collection around.
So would you say that the Providence gondola shirt is like the crown jewel?
Oh, for sure. That I feel like that shirt and that rollout like propelled me like extremely, right? And that's good and bad, because the good part is it exposed a lot of people to brand. And after that, like I sold a bunch of old products, because the gondola shirt, like I sold out, and I decided it was one of those things where I didn't want to make anymore, just to have it be like a gem. Like, hey, if you're here and you were at that pop-up when PLV first started, and you could look back 5 years from now, like, hey, I have like his first like shirt that really blew up, because like that shirt like did crazy numbers. The reel we posted got like 20K views. It got on a magazine, a well-renowned fashion magazine, Outlander Mag. Shout out to them. I was talking to the owner, and he posted the shirt, so that was really cool. So we did really well with that shirt, and I wore that shirt at Fashion Week actually, and like went crazy. Like I was just at this Kid Super event, and Kid Super is actually one of my inspirations. I was able to speak to him, so that was really great and inspiring. But I was in the room and people kept complimenting my outfit, complimenting my shirt, and I was like, hey, I made this shirt, and like from like that was cool. I made a bunch of connections off of that. So but yeah, it's just one of those things where I just, like I told you, like this idea of subjective luxury, like just associating like this crazy piece with Providence. Like think about it, like if I get this piece on celebrities or you see it styled in like a magazine or something, whether the person realize it or not, they're representing Providence.
So let's use this Providence piece, this gondola shirt as an example. Can you walk me through every step of the process? Like, because I know it's like one of the things I've noticed, it's like the print is like the entire front of the shirt, whereas usually it's not just like here's a color with like a little design. Like the design is like the entire front of the shirt.
Yeah.
So can you walk through just like I haven't like hey, here's how I got the idea, and then like here's how I designed it and drew it, or maybe you contracted the drawing out to somebody else. Then it's like, okay, find a manufacturer. How do you choose the manufacturer? What details you had to give them? How did you get the pattern made? Can you like walk through just step by step and really break it down?
Great question. All right. So the first step is always, obviously the idea. So excuse me, sorry. So the way my design process works is that I will have an idea, right? And then you see, like right now I have all these sketch pads in front of me. So I have an idea. I'll sketch out what I'm seeing in my head. It's weird how to explain. I'm sure like people in any realm of creativity, whether it's drawing, music, DJing, I'm sure you can relate. Like, do you have moments where like you're like you want to hear these two songs blended and you hear the blend in your head before you do it?
That's every 5 seconds, and sometimes it gets frustrating. Where I want it to stop.
Yeah, I thought it was just me, right?
Because no, it's not just you.
Because I can literally I can think of an idea, close my eyes, and see it. It's so crazy. So like I'll open my notes and I'll just jot down like words. Like even if I can't formulate sentences, just jot down like key words. So when I sit down and I build on the idea, I know exactly what I was thinking. Or I always carry like a lot of notepads with me. Like I have so many, like sometimes I gotta look through them and like patch the ideas together because I'll get an idea right here and then write it there. Like I keep some at work, I keep some in my backpack, some in the car. Like that's how active like my mind is all the time. So when I first get an idea, I'll sketch it out, what I feel I want it to look like, then I'll write ideas. So I'll physically write like a description of the shirt, right? And then from there, I go and look at references because I feel like that's one of the best ways to really, narrow down what exactly you're trying to make here. So once I have the references, once I have the sketch, then most times I'll try to pick colors. The way I usually pick colors, honestly, I don't know if this is cliche or not, probably not, but just the way I think, like, all my color palettes come from nature. So, like, instead of, like, looking up, like, complementary colors and stuff, I'll just look at things that I've seen outside that inspire me, because I think, when things were created, like, a lot of times, like, the man-made things, obviously somebody, like, purposely put those colors there, but, like, if you see, like, a bird fly by and you see the way the colors blend, or like if you look at a river or you look at the ocean, all that is natural, So I'll look at nature as my inspiration for colors, especially if it's a piece that like this one is based on something we see outside. So I'll do that. I already have a manufacturer. So the way I found my manufacturer is, and if anybody listening to this needs a manufacturer, please DM me. I actually have a directory that I made. I did a lot of research when I was in college looking for manufacturers. So on the CFDA website, they probably took it down, but at this time, I believe it was 2016, they had a directory of every domestic manufacturer they have like listed or that's associated with them. So I just downloaded that and then I added some others. So if anybody needs that, please contact me. I can't promise that, this list is, like I said, from 2016, so I can't promise that all of them are still in business, but there was actually one of them that one of my friends was using, so they could still be in business, but please reach out. So yeah, but my manufacturer is actually overseas. So I'll then contact my manufacturer, I'll send them the idea, I'll ask them if it's possible, which is a funny question because like, what am I going to do if they say no? Probably cry. But but yeah, I hate getting turned down, and we'll probably talk about that next. But yeah, so I'll see if the idea is possible. Then we'll talk materials, right? So the way my materials process usually works is again with references. So after I get the design reference, I look at.
Quick question about the manufacturer thing, because I think this is something that's good to note that maybe not everybody realizes. So you asked them if something is possible.
Yeah.
Does your is every manufacturer different as to what they require before they can even like produce a piece? Meaning, like, do you have to send them certain types of files? Is there certain types of like guidelines that they give you, like, hey, you need to send us like a tech pack, or like you need to send us this before we can even tell you that we're going to turn the machines on for you?
Yeah. So I haven't had the experience of having to send a tech pack every time,
or a pattern, or whatever you're doing.
So there are definitely manufacturers that are like more demanding in that sense. Like, I know of some manufacturers where if you don't send them a tech pack outlining everything, like there's no room for guessing with some of these manufacturers.
I was gonna say like they must want every little detail.
Every little detail, like down to like all the placement of things. Whereas like with my manufacturer, we've obviously, done a lot of pieces together. So I kind of have the luxury of like kind of freestyle. Like, I'll sketch and like, I'll draw arrows like, oh, I want this to go here. I want this to go here. Like, I've even sent them sketches and they'll make the tech, they'll mock it up or make the tech pack for me. Do they charge extra for that? I don't get automized receipts from them, which I probably should. I probably should, when, for business purposes, but I just get charged the price and I just pay it, honestly.
Is that rare for a manufacturer? As far as like being willing to like kind of be flexible and work with you and like, hey, so
manufacturers are hard.
I was also going to say,
I failed a lot with manufacturers.
Was that the deciding factor to choose the manufacturer that you're still working with now? Yeah. And was there other factors that went into like, I'm going to choose this manufacturer over this other one?
Yeah. So, to answer that question, the reason why I stuck with my manufacturer is because when I first did the Midnight Road Silk shirt, which, has my logo on it, I was really happy with the turnaround time. I remember getting the sample.
Can you also explain what turnaround time is?
Yes. So turnaround time is essentially once it's in their hands, how fast they get the product to you. So whether
like they approve the design. There's no more questions about like we have everything we need to make the thing. Now we're going to start making the thing.
Yeah. So if you get like verbal confirmation on Monday that so obviously there's a process. You got to go back and forth a few times, straighten out details. So once everything is green lighted, so let's say it's today, Friday, November 11th, right? And they can give you a guarantee that they will have the piece for you. Like, I'm including delivery and everything. They'll have it for you by, let's say, Black Friday, which is November 26th this year, right? So that would be, let's say, a 2-week turnaround time, exact.
And does that turnaround time include shipping, or do some places go, this is the turnaround time, we'll have it done, but then it's going to take X amount of time to ship to you?
Nah, turnaround time has to include shipping.
Okay.
Because that's a determining factor of when you're going to drop it, right? So I actually had to move the pop-up back because they didn't get the piece to me. And that's the thing, like, there's flaws with every manufacturer, right? So, and it's, we're all human at the end of the day. So, I try to give a lot of grace, but so I had paid for everything, including shipping, I think like a couple weeks before the pop-up. He was telling me he was going to be here at a certain time, a certain date. And I just wasn't like, I was out of town for a work trip, but like, I wasn't getting any updates. Like, I didn't know that the package wasn't shipped or anything. Like, I was getting no updates. I didn't even have a tracking number yet, right? So I was getting really frustrated. So I contacted my manufacturer and he told me like, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I just sent it out today. So I was expecting this thing to be here at this certain time. And I believe I paid for expedited shipping. And it just wasn't here. So I had to push the pop-up back like real last minute. But thankfully, my CEO at La Gondola, shout out to him, a great person. I'm so grateful that, we're able to make this pop-up happen. And we'll go into the logistics of that later as well. But yeah, so, hiccups happen. Like, I'll receive product and like the sizing will be off in regards of like, let's say I order like 10 of this shirt. Let's say I ordered 10 of every shirt, like small through 2XL, right? Sometimes I'll get 9 of a small and I'll get 12 of a medium. And it's like how does this happen, right? So, but like I said, we're all human. But at the end of the day, you have to be so clear with communication, especially if they're overseas.
Which I'm guessing is that why some of like the bigger like manufacturing is tough, because they're so strict, but it's because it's costing them money to make things and it's costing you time if it's wrong. So it's like the more details you have in there, the less of a chance of an error.
Yeah, because the thing is like, I'm not sure how it works with other people with their manufacturers, but for me, like I'm sure this probably is the same across the board, but for me, like, let's say I send you a sample, or let's say I receive a sample of something and it's wrong, I still have to pay for the next one to be made. It's not like manufacturers are like, oh, okay,
We'll
sorry.
make you a free sample.
Yeah. Like, oh, my bad. And they'll just do it again. Like, no, like, technically the sample is supposed to be a trial and error. So if you got to do 1, you got to do 2, you got to do 5, you got to do 10, you're paying for every single one. And people don't understand how expensive sampling is.
Well, especially if you're doing something that's not, your standard t-shirt or standard hoodie or something like that.
These cutting so simple. Like, that's why, like, people will see me, like, this jacket is dropping in the spring. And this is a sample of mine. And I wear this jacket, like, every day. But it's because I paid for it. It was super expensive. Of course, I'm, like, it's like buying, like, paying for samples is essentially going shopping without, like, without consciously planning to go shopping, if that makes sense. Like, like, if you wake up and you're like, hey, I want a new pair of shoes, I'm willing to go spend $300 today. But sampling is necessity. So I have to spend that $300 whether I like it or not, right? So that process is tough, but, it's always worth it. Like, the feeling when you get the sample and it's everything you want it to be is unmatched, right? So going from ideation to sample to just production is, like, one of the best processes, and it's so fulfilling, right? So after that long spiel, yeah. So so that step is manufacturing. So I send them everything.
And just before we move away from that, is there any other key points that you would maybe give advice to people on like, hey, here are the things you should look at for a manufacturer? Like, if they're just evaluating manufacturers, like, besides, like, willingness to work with you, if, like, unless somebody's super detail oriented, maybe they like doing that kind of stuff and they're like neurotic, but is there any other, besides, like, willingness to work with somebody, is there any other factors that you would say, like, evaluate and look out for when choosing a manufacturer for them?
Yeah, so in my own experience, when I was choosing my manufacturer, I was new to it, so I didn't really have, like, these defining factors. I just took what I could get.
Gotcha.
And that's why I kind of, like, it's been a trial and error thing for me, right? But for someone that's, more experienced, or someone that works in the industry, let's say you're, like, for example, my friend Kirby of Chambers, he's a designer at Puma, right? Or Drew, the head designer at Bodega, right? So their experience with manufacturers is probably a lot more strict and demanding than mine is, right? So, like, for me, it's more so like, okay, can you make these products for me? Like, how good are you at making these products? Do you, like, get sizing correct? Like, like, simple things of that nature. And then what I really like about my manufacturer, well, okay, so to answer your question, I guess I'll put it like this. If you have a manufacturer that could kind of make your job easier, that's the best position to be in, right? So, for example, like, my manufacturer, they do my packaging for me. They do the hang tags. They obviously sew the tags in, right? So you want to have a manufacturer that you're paying them for these services and they're giving you the best possible product they can, right? So, it's handled with care from start to finish. They send you pictures and stuff, give you updates along the way. But yeah, I mean, generally just manufacturers also, I see you're about to ask a question, but one last note, manufacturers is also dependent, like, certain manufacturers are better at things than others, right? So if you're looking for a manufacturer that specifically specializes in, let's say, sportswear, right? So if you own a sports team and you want to get jerseys and stuff made, there's manufacturers that specialize in that. Whereas if you want someone to do dresses, there's someone that specializes in that. I don't think there's really manufacturers that are like one does all.
Yeah, there's no one-stop
like,
shop.
I don't think I could go get a leather bag made at my manufacturer, right? So I think the key is to have different people that do different things. So all in all, I guess the overarching answer would be look at a manufacturer that specializes specifically in what it is that you want to do.
Were there any parts in the process that surprised you in the sense of, like, you're talking about, like, hey, with samples, like, you got to pay for each one, or like, oh, hey, I got to think about, like, hang tags, and I got to think about packaging, and I got to think about getting the labels sewn in and all that stuff. Was there any parts that, like, surprised you, or things that the manufacturer introduced or asked you that you didn't expect in your whole process from idea to finished product?
Yeah, so I think one of the toughest things I've dealt with is minimums. And this also happens with certain materials, right? So sometimes with, like, for example, I want to do a mohair sweater, and they said I couldn't do it because I needed, like, 3,000 minimum. And I'm like, that is insane. Who the freak is ordering 3,000 sweaters? But I mean, they probably have bigger brands on their, in their clientele. So there are some people that can afford to do 3,000 sweaters. I can't, but I just never saw that as a restriction, because if you could go to the store and pick up this material and fabric for me, why can't you get that one? But I don't know how it works. You know, he doesn't give me much behind the scenes, but he literally told me like I'll ask him about certain things and he'll say, no, we can't do it. It has to be X amount.
Now, while there are many sole proprietorships out there, at some point, you will realize you can't do absolutely every single little thing on your own. So picking the right partners to work with becomes essential. Albert had the self-awareness to know that he needed a manufacturer that could help guide him to bring his luxury pieces to fruition. What is equally noteworthy is that Albert found a manufacturer that was willing to work with someone that didn't necessarily have every I dotted and every T crossed. Albert chose a partner that would work with him at his level, and you should do the same. It may involve some trial and error. You may outgrow them. You may need to switch based on your current needs. You may need to work with one or an entire network. But at the end of the day, like the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, and it also takes a village to bring an idea to life. Speaking of minimums, how did you define your sizes? Like, did they define that for you, or did you define like, hey, these measurements, because like think about it, like you have to define what small, medium, large, extra large, etc. means to your brand, and like a small, like you could have 3 different T-shirts all labeled small, and they're all gonna fit differently depending on the brand they're from. So like, did you define that to the manufacturer? Did your manufacturer work with you on how to define like this is the measurements of the small versus the medium versus the large?
So what I did, and it's actually pretty cool, I think we live in an era where there's so many blueprints in front of us where you can just take whatever you need and apply it to yourself.
There's templates that you can modify.
Exactly. So I didn't necessarily take an online template, but what I did was essentially, this is a plug for anybody that's starting a clothing brand. So if you're not aware, if you go on Essence, that's SSENSE, which is a department store in Canada, is a luxury boutique store. Is it in Canada? I'm pretty sure it's in Canada. It might not be in Canada. I'm pretty sure it's in Canada. Anyways, I haven't been to Canada, so I don't know. But that's one of my favorite like stores to shop from, because every renowned fashion brand is on there, so it's great, and it's a great marketplace to like learn new brands. Like there's a running joke online that like they have so many pages that like people just scroll through all of them, so you find yourself on like page 50 and you just found like 15 new brands that you never knew about, but they make cool stuff and now you're a fan. So that's great. But yeah, so if you go on Essence and you click a piece, you could actually see the size chart. I believe some brands are aware of this, so they don't put their size chart. But if you do it,
or they bury that information, so it's like hard to find.
Exactly. But I'm pretty sure Essence is the only website where you could get like exact measurements on pieces. So
like if you went on Grailed, you could reverse engineer that, because on Grailed they're trying to require people to put measurements in.
Really?
Or they're encouraging it because they don't want to have people return shit.
Yeah.
So because I know whenever I put like a piece on Grailed, like they'll ask me.
You can return on Grailed, can you?
You can under certain circumstances.
What?
Yeah, it depends. Like if somebody fraudulently sent you something, then like there's that. But like that and eBay encourage you to list dimensions. So I wonder if like that's another way to reverse engineer it. Just go on Grailed, find a piece from a brand you like, and see if somebody listed the measurements. Then it's like, there you go.
But Grailed is hit or miss though, because
true.
Like for example,
it's also depending on how old it is. But the Essence one makes sense. So that's how you got your sizing then.
To an extent.
Okay.
Essence. So when I first started, I didn't have a reference point, so I just looked, and I forgot who gave me this advice, but somebody specifically gave me this, or I might have heard it in an interview, but they were literally like just look at pieces you've seen, that you actually like, and just take those measurements, right? But the thing is though, you have to define where you want your brand to sit, right? So if your brand is based on European sizing or Japanese sizing, then you're gonna obviously have to find brands that sit in that same, that same realm of sizing.
Right.
So for me, I kind of knew I wanted like a boxy fit for the button-ups, but not like super boxy. Like if you've seen like a Prada shirt or like some other brands, like they're essentially like cropped, like it's super wide. I was like, I wanted something that falls more naturally. So it kind of gives you a elongated look, but at the same time, it is boxy. Like it doesn't fit super snug on the body. It has a little bit of a boxy fit. And then if you look, my one of the brand identities, which you'll like, you probably haven't thought too much about it, but if you look at all the shirts, the collars are exaggerated. So that's something I did on purpose.
It reminds me of like almost like a camp shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like I've seen like, like bowling shirts or like camp shirts, but I haven't seen any with collars as big as mine. And I wanted that to be an identifier for PLV.
Was there anything you had to compromise on? Was there like, hey, I want to do these kind of buttons or something, or like I want to do this kind of like material that you had to like the manufacturer, besides the sweater thing? Like,
Yeah.
Like even with the pieces you currently have, was there anything that you had to like be flexible, or the manufacturer telling you like, hey, you want to do it this way, it's going to cost you this much, but it'll be significantly cheaper if you like change this one little detail or something like that?
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. Mainly with materials, like I mentioned, materials is definitely a defining factor. My issue with my manufacturer that I have sometimes is that I'll have an idea for something and like everything will go so great, and then when I get it, it's just not what I wanted. And it's typically in regards of quality, right? So I've realized my manufacturer does button-ups exceptionally well. Those button-ups are great quality. I love them, right? But in other things, like I tried to make a windbreaker jacket and it sucked. All due respect to my manufacturer. I got it and it was awful. Like I would never wear this.
So now you're like, okay, I need to find like maybe a sportswear manufacturer.
Yeah, somebody that could do this. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm like, yo, this is bad. You get me? So it's like, you gotta pick and choose your battles. I know my manufacturers can do button-ups really well. So maybe now I have to look for a manufacturer that could do, like you said, those type of windbreakers, right? Or I'm waiting to see how they do. I made a varsity jacket for my friend Israel Wusu, and it was cool, but the leather on the sleeves just wasn't good. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't even know how to describe how bad the leather was. Like it was bad. Like it almost felt like the leather on top of like a old couch or something. It was awful. Right? So it's like, where is he sourcing these materials from? Right? So it's like, it's just tough. I think you got to pick and choose your battles with your manufacturer. I think you have to always be super specific with what you want. And always send them references. That's another good thing. Like if you could find a sweater already made, like the design obviously doesn't matter. If you want to make a blue, let's say cashmere blend sweater, find one. Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, whoever, find one and send it to them so they at least know what it looks like. That'll give them an idea when they're going and looking for materials. And always ask them, if you know enough about materials, like I do a lot of research on materials and stuff. I get a lot of swatches. I subscribe to some company that sends me swatches every month. So I do a lot of like fabrics and materials research. But it gives you the breakdown, right? Like you could see a pair of sweatpants is 98% polyester, 2% elastane, or like 38% cotton, like 2% wool, like whatever. But just understand what these things mean, right? So that when you're explaining the materials to him, you know exactly what to tell him, so he could go and find it, or he or she, they can go and find it. And if they can't do that material, then they'll let you know, rather than them saying they can, you pay for it, you get it, and it's not what you wanted. Just to make your life a little easier,
So we're going for the process of, you had the idea, you sketched it out, you sent it to the manufacturer, you went through the samples, you went through the quality, you went through the back and forth, you waited on the shipping.
Yeah.
You have it in your hand.
Yeah.
How do you go about pricing it? Because like you were saying before, how you wanted to price it a certain way that like, because obviously you wanted to make money.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you determine your break even, and how do you go about your pricing? Because also you said, you want it to be luxury, but
Yeah. Bless you.
thank you. You want it to be luxury, but you don't want it to be so high to the point where like nobody,
accessible.
it's not accessible to people. So how do you go? Because I think this is an interesting question for so many creatives. How do you go about pricing your stuff?
So, that's a great question. So my first thought process is like we mentioned before, is value. How do I price it at a point that will not break, well, at least in my opinion, not break, the pockets of people that are interested in this shirt, right? But how can you also price it where it can have value, right? Because I just feel as like if I price the button up at $50, it might not be appreciated the same way. But also at the same time, when you look at everything that went into making the button up, so obviously, I don't need or expect a super crazy profit margin on each piece. That's not really, like, I would design for free, like this is something I love. So I make stuff for myself all the time and never sell it. Like, it's something I do. I would do it for free, but at the end of the day, it's a business. So you need to price it at a point that makes sense, right? So think about the expenses, the overhead, the sampling charge, factor all those things in. Once you get that off, what is a comfortable point where you could say, okay, this was worth it, right? So whether that's $20 for you, whether it's $30, $40, $50, that, like, let that be your small profit margin, right? In a place that makes sense for you. And then, certain products could be priced more. Like, I was thinking about making the Renaissance shirt more expensive than the other ones because it was a limited edition shirt. It's something that was never going to release again. And it was a very intricate design, whereas like the other shirts were a little more plain, right? So that's something that I would have considered. I didn't because, we're still in the early stages of the brand. But let's say had I been running successfully for 5 years, maybe that'd be a little more expensive because it is a one-off type of never to be created again type of shirt, But I say, for any creative listening, I say price your work, based on the value you put to it, right? How you feel about it, how much work you put into it, and a price that you're willing to stand proudly on. I think a lot of times, and this has happened with myself, like, I was thinking like, if I made this shirt a certain price, maybe nobody would buy it.
So you're worrying about the market dictating the price rather than you dictating the price? Okay.
Yeah, to an extent. But I realized, like, when I sold the shirt and I sold out so quick, I was like, dang, like, should I have made it more? But you never want to get money hungry with something that you love because it takes the fun out of it, right? It takes like the natural factor of it gets taken away when you start thinking of a dollar sign. Like, I never design anything and think like, wow, this is gonna sell crazy, but for the dollar amount. I think, wow, this is gonna sell crazy and a lot of people are gonna have it, and that's what makes me happy.
Speaking of dollars, how did you, because you said you work a job as well.
Yes.
How did you raise funds to even get this stuff made? And was that like a moment, I wonder, was that the moment where it's like, oh, this is real because I have to like get money and pay somebody now, and I'm gonna get this idea that I had in my brain, and now it's gonna be this physical thing I can touch and wear. So was that like a moment for you where it's like, oh, this is real now because I got to put up actual money, and yes or no, and then also how did you go about raising the funds?
Yeah, so to answer both of those great questions, it's kind of one of those things, like, like I think of like becoming an adult, right? When you kind of have to start paying for things on your own, like when your parents aren't backing everything, you start to value them a little different, right? So I started to take my brand a lot more serious when I started to have to put my own money into it. And like I said, sampling is not cheap at all. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if you're going to start, you have to commit to it. So if I'm going to pay X amount for the sample, then I have to turn around and make this product. It just has to be worth it, right? And so that's what kind of made it real for me, is the sampling, speaking to artists, oh my goodness, that's another thing that we're going to talk about. Like, when you have an idea and you can't find anyone to make it, because me personally, like, I can't draw that well. So like, I have to pay someone to do my artwork, like, I used to be really good with graphic design, but I fell off a little bit, just, focusing on other stuff. So I'm really good at coming up with ideas, but I struggle sometimes with finding people to make them. because I went through like a countless amount of like graphic designers and stuff, and they weren't able to bring certain visions to life. And you know, that's no shade to them, because certain graphic designers specialize in different things, right? So,
or they also made maybe like the manufacturer thing. It's like, I need every little detail from you before I even put pen to paper or, you know, pen to screen, because I'm not going to guess here.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, when working with people, you have to understand, like, they can only create what you tell them to create. Like, sometimes you get a little bit of leeway.
And they might infer, but then if it's not exactly what you want, they're going to be like, well, yeah, I had to infer what you want.
Exactly. So try to be as specific as you can, but also give people that grace that, like, you know, not everybody can see, like, you. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm sure maybe you could think of it from even like a DJ perspective. Like, you're trying to explain to somebody that, hey, this thing would work, but they don't understand the vision. You get what I'm saying? Like, they're not hearing it the same way you are.
It's one thing to have it in your head. It's another thing to translate it and then to be able to explain it to other people.
Yeah. So being able to articulate your ideas is very hard sometimes. Like, me, like, I personally don't feel like I'm that great at talking. I get like very, like, I start to ramble because there's so many things going on in my head. Like, I don't really know how to express everything. Whereas, like, if I'm writing ideas, it's more like, that's a scattered process for me, so it works easier for me. Whereas, like, speaking, I got to speak on the spot, you know, and it's tough. But yeah, so I struggled a lot with finding proper artists. A lot of trial and error. Oh my goodness. And I feel like it's a certain aesthetic that I look for, especially, like, a lot of my references are vintage. I love, like, vintage artwork and stuff. So a lot of my stuff is, like, you know, like painted or oil painting, things of that nature, like watercolor. So I had to find an artist that specializes in that.
I want you to hold on to that, because that leads to another question I was going to save for later.
Okay.
But just real quick. So you were talking about, like, hey, when you have to pay for stuff on your own, you take it seriously.
Yeah.
What was, like, if you want to share the dollar amount, you don't have to, but what was the price of just that? Not even all the piece you have, just that one Providence piece. And, like, how did you raise the funds? Was it just like, I have to save up for this? Was it, did you already have money put aside and then, like, it would cover it? Did you realize, like, you wouldn't cover it? You're like, oh, I have to do. So what, like, how did you figure that out? Like, and how did you get the funds?
Yeah. So, thankfully I have, like, a career. So my job is where I get my funding for my brand.
So this is self-funded.
Yeah, it's self-funded. If there's anybody listening that wants to be an investor, please contact me. We could talk, because I have a lot of ideas, so we can make it shake.
Or if I win the lawsuit that comes against me,
who will make
any
it
of these
sick?
people, and then I will invest. You know what? You can hold me to that. You know, if I somehow win whatever lawsuit comes my way, because it's about to happen.
We name dropped a lot of big people. I'm scared.
So
actually.
many are gonna start suing.
They might take this off of the internet. I saw Kanye talk about Bernard, and, like, it disappeared.
Hey, you know, Eric Bischoff said it best: controversy creates cash. So
hey, man. Hey, I'm not gonna say it, because, you know, Bernard might sign my checks one day, but Jason said that Bernard sucks. He said Bernard sucks. So if we want to put that as a headliner, Jason said Bernard sucks.
Man, I'm literally just gonna get, like, one of those crink graffiti paint markers and go on Grailed. I don't care if it's fake or real, and buy some of these brands and just start drawing. Bernard, sue me, Rick.
That would actually, I'm seeing it now. That would actually be fire. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, that could be a nice art installment. Wow. just paint it on anyway. So money. So you're self-funded. All right. Yeah. So we're self-funded. Yeah, we got off track. So yeah, I was self-funded. So it hits a little harder, you know, when the money is coming out of your own pocket,
your own account.
Yeah, it definitely hits harder, because you gotta think about it. Like, there's times where, like, I'm struggling. I'm eating crackers for dinner. Did you
get the number first? Like, did you get the number from the manufacturer first? And they're like, hey, so you need to pay us this much money.
Yeah.
And is it an estimate, or like could they possibly run into things where then it's even more than what they originally thought it was, and it's like, crap, I have to get X more money?
Yeah, thankfully that hasn't happened to me. I haven't had that happen where they're like, this is more expensive than I thought it would be. But I know that happens a lot in a lot of different industries, but that hasn't happened to me personally. So I'm very happy about that. And thankfully, my manufacturer lets me put a deposit down, which is usually 50%. But, you know, if you got to pay $4,000, $2,000 right now is a lot better. And then you pay the rest upon delivery. But that also helps you with quality assurance, right? Because sometimes, and I noticed one time when I paid everything up front, the product didn't come out right, or they like were like a little like
you have a little bit less leverage since they have the money already.
They have all the money, so they could even choose to screw me over. You know, like that's the thing. Like with overseas manufacturers, it's all a gamble. Like I'm paying this person I've never met before, and technically, like I don't even know if I could get them in trouble. Like who am I gonna call? I can't.
Who are you going to go to?
Yeah, I can't tell 911 this person I'm communicating with on WhatsApp stole money from me. What are they going to do? Nothing. So it's just one of those things where you're just trusting the integrity of these people and who they've worked with, right? So that's another thing. If you're going to work with an overseas manufacturer, make sure like, you know, they're like certified. If you have anyone that's worked with them before, that's a plus. Or if they can even name brands they've worked with, that's another plus. Just so, you know, give you a little bit of, yeah, exactly. Give you, so you know you're in safe hands. But, yeah, so self-funded, I pay for the sample. Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
No, actually, I think this segues into,
the shirt, the specific shirt.
Well, I was going to say this segues in the question about when you were talking about working with artists and things like that, because you were saying you were more of an idea person.
Yeah.
So besides having the self-realization that you're an idea person.
Yeah.
How do you go about determining what to delegate, like what to reach out to somebody and have them do a thing versus like, I can take care of this? Because I feel like that's just a general thing in business alone. Like at what point do I hand this off so I can actually run the business and keep the thing going rather than trying to micromanage, do everything yourself? So you mentioned, you know, having the self-realization that there are better designers out there. I'll hand that off to them. But is there any other stuff that you delegate? And what is it? And how do you determine what to delegate?
So the only thing I really delegate is the artwork. And then obviously the manufacturing. Everything else I do myself. So, you know, I'll pick the fabrics. I'll, you know, decide like the colors, the fit, the measurements, all that. Even the grading. I got into like grading. So grading is like, let's say I make a sample size large. So based on the measurements for the large, now we have to determine the measurements for the medium, the small, the extra large, and the 2XL based on the measurements for the large. It's not really that difficult. It's usually, you know, depending on what the fit of the shirt is, usually it'll be like half an inch here or, you know, 2 inches here. It just depends on it's a sliding scale. Like for the bigger sizes, you add a little more. For the smaller sizes, you take off a little less. It all depends. But yeah, so I had to figure out the grading. I got help from Kirby for the first time I did that, which was great. Because, you know, he's a designer at Puma, so he was able to give me some insight on that. But yeah, so mainly it's the artwork that I have to delegate, and then obviously the clothes physically getting made. But everything else I do myself. So I'm a one-man army right now, but I'm definitely looking for help.
Now, when it comes to that one-man army thing, you know, I'm assuming you probably did the website yourself as well. And I'm only saying that that's not for anybody who tries to infer anything here. That's not a jab. It's leading into my question.
He was throwing shit at me.
It's gonna lead in my question.
Yeah.
Because with websites now, there's so many templates and so many things like your Squarespaces of the world and stuff like that, where it's fairly easy as a one-man operation to get a website up. Right. I'll attest to that as well. However,
it takes time.
You're not just selling online. You were talking about your pop-up.
Yeah.
So that brings the question, you know, were you the one-man operation for the pop-up? Did you have help? And what went into, see, again, I'm not throwing shade, people. This leads into stuff. What went into that pop-up? Like, how many things did you have to consider? What did you have to prepare for? How did you choose the location? Like, how did you go about in your head creating a retail experience in person? Because online, it's a lot easier to craft it because you can just choose color palettes and designs. But in person, there's way more dynamics. So can you walk through that? Like, you have the pieces.
Yeah.
You already had to set the date back. But like, what went into preparing that first pop-up? And did you have to delegate anything? And like, what were the things you had to consider? And were there like some surprises where like, oh, I didn't realize I had to think about this?
Yeah. So great question. The pop-up was really fun. It was an experience, and thank you to everyone that you know, took time out of their evening to be there.
I was there.
Yeah. This actually happened really organically. Like, we met at the pop-up, and then it just, it turned into this. So this is great. And thank you so much for following up, Jason.
Oh, yeah. No problem, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, I can't say thank you enough. But yeah, so, all right. So I'll walk y'all through like the genesis of how everything went down. So, I can't give you dates.
Take us from you have products and you have the idea for the pop-up to all right, the pop-up starting.
Yeah. All right. So it's funny because when I was making this shirt, I didn't know how I wanted to do the pop-up. I was thinking and there's nothing against like doing, like a regular retail pop-up, but I was like, no, like, again, one of those ideations behind PLV is like, that subjective luxury. And like, one of the most luxurious things to me is being around people that, share the same, interests as you, right? Or even like, I don't know if everyone can relate, but those times where like you hang out with your friends and then after you reflect about it and it's like life is worth living again, right? So I was like, how can I continuously create that feeling over and over, right? Organically, and also have that be associated with my brand. So I was like, boom, let me just create an experience based on the piece that we're marketing, right? So I was like, okay, we're doing this shirt. Let's do the pop-up. And I made a joke. I was like, yeah, we're going to do the pop-up there. Like I always made a joke that I wanted to do like a runway show on the Providence River, right? So we're doing the photo shoot at La Gondola. And before I get there, my friend Chowder, or Elio, is his actual first name. He's a photographer. And then the model, his name is Donald or Donnie. We call him Donnie. But we call him Tan. We'll just call him Tan, right? For all intents and purposes, we'll call him Tan. That's his Instagram, Tanavelli. Great model. So Tan and Chowder were at the location for the pop-up. And before I get there, they're hitting me up and they're telling me like, hey, like the owner's looking for you. And I'm like, that's strange. I wonder why. So when I get there, they're like, hey, this is the owner of La Gondola, and they formally introduce us, and I'm talking to him. And he's telling me how much he loves the shirt. And I'm like, wait, wow, this is real. Like, we're having a conversation. And he's telling me about his idea for his company in the future and how he wants to expand it and all these different things. And he's talking about how he's always wanted merchandise and how he loves, the shirt, and he would love like for it to represent La Gondola. So we're doing the photo shoot there on site. As some of you have seen the pictures. If you haven't, please feel free to go and check them out on the PLV official Instagram page. But so after we finished the photo shoot, he told me that he would love for me to do the pop-up for the shirts there. So boom. So that's step number one. We got we verbally agreed that we're going to do the pop-up there, right? That's the easy part.
You got the location.
Exactly. We got the location. But then we got to figure out how we're going to do this, right? So I'm looking at the space and I'm like, dang, like, how are we even going to pull this off? How are we going to be able to manage all these people in a public area? That's the number one issue. It's a public area.
Outdoors and like there's weather and it's public and people can be walking by.
Exactly. There was so many different factors, but I was thinking about like, okay, we're doing this shirt on site. It could be people going there for, to go rent the gondolas or go on a gondola ride, and they could organically see the shirt. But I was like, you know what? Let me actually create an entire experience. Let me rent out the gondolas for a couple hours of the duration of the pop-up so that the people that come can go ride them for free, right? So I was like, again, back to this experience thing.
I think you had like champagne and stuff
too,
right?
I also did a free bar. Yeah, so I did a free bar. So it was all about providing an experience for me. I wanted people to take something away from the pop-up besides the fact that they're coming and buying the shirt, right? Again, now everybody that came to the pop-up and got the shirt, they can associate that shirt with their first gondola ride. It's like, that's just a bigger picture that I like to think on. It's like there's a lot of emotion and feeling that goes into, the things that we wear, right? As I mentioned before earlier, like I dress based on how I'm feeling. So if someone bought that shirt based on their first gondola ride experience, and that's a positive experience that they're now associating with the brand. So, in regards to logistics, so obviously I had to pay for, the renting of the boats for, I believe it was 2 or 3 hours, which was quite expensive. You guys ran me up, but thank you everyone for coming. So we had to pay for that. I had to pay for the DJ, Mad About That Life. Shout out to him. He did a wonderful job. I had to pay for the clothing racks. I obviously had to pay for the wine and champagne. Had to pay for the cups, which my friend Jada provided. Shout out to her. Thank you so much, Jada. Love you. My friend Dejan ran the register for me. My best friend. Shout out to Day. Appreciate you, bro. What else do we have going on? I believe that was it. And then I guess another node to the logistics.
Also promoting it too.
Yes, promoting it. Yes,
get the word out.
Yes. So I paid obviously the photographer for the photo shoot. I also paid the videographer, Laren Ritter. He did a great job with the promotional video. What else did we pay for? I had to. My friend Tito. He taught me how to screen print like a few days before. So we actually screen printed the tote bags. So we had to pay for that. I also had to pay for the tote bags to get them shipped out over here. So there was quite a lot of things that we had to
a lot of
consider.
moving pieces.
Exactly. And then I also had to think about what day would make sense, right? Because if you're doing on the weekend, people like to go out. It's just a fact, right? So I knew if I did it on a Friday, maybe we wouldn't have the proper turnout, right? So I decided what's a good day that makes sense for people to come out, especially and participate in these things that I'm offering, such as like, the open bar, such as like the gondola ride, and stay a while, right? So I figured a Thursday. Thursday for most people is like their wind down day. People are usually getting ready for the weekend. So I was like, all right, a Thursday makes sense. The times made sense. The dates made sense. So, and then also we had to consider the weather because it was outdoors. But all in all, after all the planning, it was a great turnout and a lovely experience. The owner of Cafe Vino, I believe it's called, the food place right there.
Yep.
Yeah. His buddies actually came down and tried to get him a shirt, but I didn't have his size. I sold out already, but that was really cool as well. Like everybody saw what was going on and they wanted to be a part of it. So I was really appreciative of that. But yeah, the pop-up is just like a wonderful memory and I can't wait to do the next one. The next pop-up we're going to do, I wanted to do it on Black Friday, but the clothes aren't ready yet. But I'm thinking early December. So I wanted to do like the coolest clothing drive. So I'm thinking my idea for it is I'm going to have, and nobody steal this. No, I'm kidding. I would actually love if, more brands did this. I feel like it could be really beneficial. But so I'm going to do a pop-up and we're going to make it a clothing drive. So if you bring an article of clothing, then you receive a free piece. I'm still deciding what the piece is. Maybe it'll be a t-shirt, maybe it'll be a tote bag, but I'm thinking it's a really good way to get us all gathered, but also do it for a good cause, right? It's essentially an exchange. You're bringing in something that you're willing to donate, and I'm giving you something new for it. But yeah, so I can't wait to do that. I just need to, there's a bunch of logistics that have to go into that as well. I need to find either a nonprofit or, a donating center where we could get all the clothes donated to. So that's probably the most important thing I need to figure out right now. But I think that'll be fun. I'm also going to offer on-site screen printing. So I think that's another thing that, a lot of people probably have thought about learning, just aren't sure how. So I'm thinking they're either going to be able to screen print their own shirts or they're going to be able to screen print their own tote bags. But I think that'll be cool. I just like think of cool ways to get people together and just, interact, right? I think people try to think of fashion as this like super like insiders club, like I don't know, like this hierarchy. And I just think like it's more like the luxury for me is more in the experiences, the feeling around the clothes, the feeling around everything we're doing, like building a community, right? Like if people know that PLV is this place where they could come and feel home and they could see their friends and experience new things, right? Like I said, luxury is subjective. So I want to introduce people to things that maybe they either haven't thought of or they haven't done before. But it's something that, they could benefit from greatly. So I think that's cool. Community is very important.
So, you did this pop-up and now you're talking about your next pop-up idea that's going to be a bit different, right?
Yeah.
You do have your website and, there's a lot of people who like design like clothes. And when I say design, it's more of like a drop shipping method. It's to actually like, it's more about a business rather than design stuff, right? Like you hear about all these stories like on Amazon, stuff like that. Then you have people who they build brands, but they're like online only. Like they're just selling right off Instagram. They don't even have a website. And then You know, there's been so many arguments made, like, is retail dying? Is it not dying? Da, da, da. What do you think? Do you think that, like, it's a hybrid model? Do you think there's going to be just more pop-ups? Do you think, like, you know, people do need the physical store? Does the physical store not? Like, do you think it's like kind of a blending of the two? What is your opinion on that, since you do have both and you're doing these like pop-up experiences?
So I think the most important way that I see retailers, you know, kind of curving this notion of retailing dying out is that they're, like I said, providing an experience, right? So if we think of Aimee on Door in New York, right, you know they have a cafe. Or you think of Kith ice cream, right? So there's things that...
And Ralph Lauren had the restaurant.
I didn't even know that. That is crazy.
They had a restaurant for, I don't know if it's still around, but like they had a restaurant at one point. I don't know if they still have it or not, but yeah, it was
that
like to coincide with that.
Sheesh. Thank you for telling me that. I'm gonna look that up and do a bit of research on that. But yeah, so I think when you're able to provide, like I said, as simple as that, provide an experience, have something that people are drawn to the brand for, other than, you know, you just selling them a product, I think that's what helps these brick and mortar stores thrive. You know, like these boutiques, for example, like Bodega's a really cool concept store. Like just going there is cool, right? So a lot of people associate that with the brand. Going there, you know, the whole, you have to pull, I think you got to slide the door, you got to pull the handle open and the door opens. Like the front of the store actually looks like a bodega, and that's incredible, right? But Bodega also periodically does like, they'll do like parties. Like I went to a Reebok and Bodega collab party, and it was incredible.
Or look at the A-Life parties and how, you know, and rest in peace A-Life, but like look how all those became like legendary when they're like getting people like John Mayer and Just Blaze to perform together in the backyard, and it's like, well, I want to go be part of that.
Yeah, like, and that's how big I want to take it, like just having fun, you know, because I have so many friends in the DJ space and doing other things. Like we could associate the brand with so many things, but at the end of the day, though, it has to make sense, right? You can't just do things because you don't want your brand associated with everything. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's like you don't want people to confuse what it is that your brand does.
You don't want to muddy the story.
Exactly. You don't want people to now think PLV is a party label, right? You don't want them to like mix everything you're doing. Everything has to be specific in due timing, right? But back to answer your question, yeah, so it's like, you know, some people go to Aimee on Door and get their daily coffee the same way they do. Well, it's probably super expensive, but they'll go there every day and build a relationship with the workers, build a relationship with the baristas, you know, like know that they can go in there and kick it, right?
I mean, yeah, Bape had cafes. Bape had hotels back in the day,
I'm telling you that, but it's really that simple. Like, that's really so, like, every time I go to New York, even if I don't buy anything at Kith, I go get the ice cream because it's incredible. And it's cool to, like, the shopping experience is that much cooler when I'm enjoying ice cream.
It's also a very lower, like really low priced entryway into the brand. Especially if you're a young kid that can't afford the t-shirt, the sneakers, but you can afford to pay $10 for like a Kith treat cereal and like maybe the milk or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. And like, as you can see, like I keep like, you know, like little memorandums on my desk. Like I went from the New York Fashion Week party. They, how do you say that liquor? Jägermeister.
Oh, Jägermeister.
Jägermeister. They sponsored it, so it was Kid Super artwork on the bottles they gave out.
Oh, gotcha. And Kith is doing something similar now for the Knicks game.
Yeah,
they're doing the towels. They're doing like commemorative cups. They're doing everything. They're doing a pop up. Out like right at the entrance of the arena. You don't have to have a ticket, but if you have a ticket, they'll give you extra shit.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I as you can see, I collect everything. I keep boxes, like all types of cool stuff. Right.
I'm seeing the Reese's Puff Travis Scott.
Yeah,
and I'm seeing the Cactus Plant Feed Market McDonald's.
Yeah, we got a bunch of stuff. So it's just like, you know, these little things that people could collect. Like for example, like we did like crazy numbers on the tote. I keep saying we, but it's me, but we just sounds better. But we did crazy numbers on the tote bag at the pop-up, right? Because like I said, not everybody could do that 110 for the shirt at the time, but at the pop-up, the totes were going crazy. You know, it's like you said, it's an entry level, right? So, but yeah, I think to answer your question, building an experience, like it has to be a reason why people are drawn to your brand, right? Like for example, I went to Cure today. And they had a projector. Well, I like every time I go to Cured, I always hang out, and I love that. Not like besides the fact that obviously my friends and stuff work there, and Sudi's a great friend of mine, but I feel like Cured is like, and I'm not sure if a lot of people appreciate it in this sense, but like Curator is really an experience. Like, it's a teaching moment almost. Like, if you go in there, like, you could learn about so many different things by just going on all the racks. But I don't think people think about it that way.
I've had so many conversations about like Japanese brands and pieces that I like that aren't really available here.
Yeah.
And like him and I have gone
I'm
off,
telling
and then I'll buy a piece eventually. But it's
Yeah.
just kind of one of those things where it's like he's like, nah, I get you.
Yeah, it's crazy though. Like, if I go into Curator and Sudi's there, I'll probably stay there for 3 hours because he's so knowledgeable. We'll sit there and talk about everything. Like, we actually wanted to do a podcast together at one time, but maybe it will happen. You know, let's put it in the air. But
Have him a guest on the Tiny Table podcast.
yeah, we're gonna actually do
with
that.
Albert and Jason.
We're actually gonna do that. I think it'll be like a music meets fashion type
It
thing.
needs to be comically small table, though.
Yeah, like it needs to be like super. Like, I don't know if you've seen those like really small Japanese tables. I'm hearing it in my head. I think this is gonna work. The A&J Tiny Table, but we're gonna get sued. But it's okay. Sue us, please. You see how it went from sue Jason to sue us.
Yeah,
we're getting there.
There you go.
But yeah. So I just think when you're able to build a relationship with a consumer, I think that's the most important thing, right? So it's just these little subconscious things. Like, for example, people shop with Noah because they're sustainable, right? Or I don't know, people shop with Supreme. Well, at the beginning though, Supreme always had this like I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like they didn't want you to buy their clothes.
Yeah, it was at that time like every boutique. Like I remember going to Clientele across the street.
Yeah.
For like kicks and shit, and like you had to have like a certain attitude walking in there. And
it's crazy.
And if you like showed any weakness or something,
they'd kick you out.
They wouldn't even kick you out. They would just make you feel so uncomfortable. You would leave. Like it was like every boutique like at that time, and a lot of secret places, like everybody was a dick intentionally.
I heard like horror stories about Supreme. Like, if you didn't skate, like they weren't even assisting you. It's crazy. Which I get it though. I guess, right? It's not my company, but I get it. That all, you know, added to the brand. But yeah, so it's just those different things. Like, I always think about like, how would a PLV retail space exist in this time that we live in, right? In this time where like everything's so consumable. We have like TikTok culture and social media and stuff. Like, how would I create a retail? And I have this notion of acquired taste, and I think that'll be like my addition to the city. Like, when all is said and done, and you know, there's a time for that, I think if we were able to create a retail space that not only allowed, let's say, I'll use the word local, designers to exist, right, in a space that allowed consumers from the city and from outside the city to come and buy our products readily available on racks, but also allow, you know, people to, whether it's like vintage pieces or, you know, avant-garde pieces or ready to wear, like from other brands that like they haven't been introduced to, right? They don't know about them yet. Or maybe they do know about them and they just don't know where to buy it, right? I always think about that, like the idea of acquired taste. Like, you might not have been introduced to your potentially favorite thing yet. So I think that might be what could exist in Providence, right? Maybe we don't need the square footage of a Nordstrom, right, to fill it up with, let's say, LV, Gucci, Dior and stuff, because it probably wouldn't do well. But maybe if we had a small boutique store and we decided the quantities and we decided the brands that go in there, right, based on, let's say, whether it was polls or just brands that, you know, numerically we see that people wear out here, and then we also add our own touch to it. And we also make it a space where we can do things such as pop-ups, or we could, you know, do different installments, right? It could also serve as a gallery, just like a multifaceted space. I think that's the future of retailing in Providence. But that's that. Oh my gosh, I just dropped the mic again. Drops mic. But yeah, I think that's where we can exist.
So speaking of that, I think this is a good one to go out on. As you said, drop mic. What is the future, both short and long term, for you, for Pour La Ville?
Yeah. And
what advice would you give to, you know, a younger designer out there? Maybe what advice would you have given to your younger self?
Yeah, this is actually my favorite type of question. This is like the type of question that you hear the super like motivational music on. You see a clip or you see a reel.
Listen, I'm not doing those kind of clips. There's too many of those craptacular clips already.
Yeah. Hey, it's a good grab though. I definitely listen for like 2 seconds and then swipe out. But hey, that's
like we're gonna keep the inspirational stuff, but we're not gonna make it cheesy.
Yeah. Please, no cheesiness. I'm lactose intolerant. I just dropped the mic again. That was fire.
But
all right, but all seriousness. So the future for me, right? So first of all, I've learned a lot. So every time I'm not like, releasing, I'm basically doing like R&D. Well, let me not lie. Sometimes I'm being lazy. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm mainly doing R&D, right? So every day I'm figuring out ways to, connect with the consumer. Or I'm building a story, or I'm designing pieces. I've had to push like collections back because I just felt like maybe it wasn't time yet. Maybe I can drop it in a way that'll be more impactful. So I'll rearrange, so. But right now, I'm working on a small capsule collection that's going to drop probably next month, or hopefully, let's say fingers crossed next month. It's in sampling right now. So, hopefully everything goes well. That'll drop. I have a spring summer collection, which is probably going to be my biggest offering ever. But I'm very excited for it. Like this jacket I'm wearing, I really love. It's going to have a Pearl logo. So that's going to be really cool. There's going to be a lot of great cut and sewing pieces in there. Should be doing a Black History Month. That's going to be a collab with the brand Waterside. One of my good friends, Anthony. He has a really dope brand. So we're going to do a collab for Black History Month. And then anything that comes up in between. I already have the fall collection next year planned out. So I can't wait for that. I think that's going to be crazy. Just the momentum and everything that's going to lead up to that. I'm super excited for that. But I'm really working on is trying to narrow down on the smaller things. I feel like I got caught up worrying too much about like, I want to drop this crazy piece, like the big cut and sew pieces and stuff. And I forgot about like the simpler things like t-shirts, like the essentials, like socks, hats.
The things that are the money makers for these other luxury brands.
Honestly, 100%. Right. So I think that's my biggest goal for myself right now. Obviously, I'm not forcing it because I don't like to create things like without being inspired. But thankfully, I've like positioned myself to be in a creative mode every day. I'm not really sure how I've done it, and I don't want to be like super like spiritual or anything. But I just try to just stay aware. I guess that's the word I'll use. Like I try to seek the inspiration in everything. So I'll go with that. But there's a lot coming up for the brand, and I appreciate everyone that's been supporting. I'm definitely another thing I need to do more is post more on the brand page. So that's a goal I'm setting for myself, is to just be more interactive. I have this visual mood board thing I'm working on, which is essentially going to be like maybe weekly or bi-weekly installments, and it's just going to kind of show where my inspiration, just going to post, kind of think of like a Tumblr, right? But it's going to be more interactive than just like pictures. So, and hopefully that could grow into something, where we start having conversations around the things that inspire us. So that's a goal I have for the brand. Hopefully we could, make that happen. But the advice I would give to a young designer is, number one, as cliche as it sounds, believe in yourself. Like, seriously. Like, whatever you're thinking, just go do it. Because I'll tell you, for years, like, literally, I started and I'd walk back. Started, walk back. Take 4 steps, take 3 back. Like, I just always juggled with this idea, like, okay, what if they don't accept it, right? What if it's not time? There's no idea. When it comes to being a creative, there's technically no idea. There's no such thing as, like, the right time, right? Because we're perfectionists about our own work. So you're always going to be able to critique your own work. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just need to take a step back so you could appreciate it, right? So I say, put the work in, believe in yourself, and you just gotta move crazy, like in the sense of like you just gotta be able to risk it all, right? Roll the dice, because eventually it's gonna pay off. Like, ask questions. If there's anybody, especially myself, like, please feel free to ask questions if you have any. DM me. I'm more than willing to sit down and have a conversation with you, give you any guidance. I think the biggest goal for me is to just put myself in a position to help others that want to start, because I know in my beginning, it was very hard for me to get started because I didn't know where to start, right? I didn't know who to ask. And I think that's another point I want to add is do your research, right? The internet has, I don't want to say has all the answers, but a good 85% of the questions you're going to ask are on the internet. There are some questions that you won't find on the internet, and those are you'll probably learn those through experience or through conversations with people that have done it before, right? But yeah, just get started. I think we get too caught up sometimes on the bigger picture that we never even take the first step. And I think we never realize that, like, how are you going to get to step 10 if you don't take the first one, right? So just get started. Have an idea, refine your vision, and then just, make a plan. Roll it out, and then just never lose sight of what your vision is. I think a lot of people get caught up. Just never lose sight. Like, at the end of the day, I know where I want to be, so I'm doing everything to position myself to get there, right? But, yeah, I mean, it's not too much thought. I think, if you have something that you want to create, just put your best foot forward and, make sure you're creating a product that's not only for yourself, but that can benefit the people that are going to be consuming it. I think that's important.
Any final words? Anything you want to plug? The floor is yours. We're going to go out with whatever you want to say.
The floor is mine. Sheesh. I guess thank you again, Jason, for having me. This was great. I get really nervous when I'm talking and stuff, so I probably rambled a bit. Don't hold that against me. But no, honestly, I think there's a lot of great things going on in Providence, and I'm glad to, be a part of it. I think that I just want to say I'm proud of everybody that's killing it right now. You guys inspire me every day, even if I don't tell you enough. Like, you're all doing extremely well. And I think we've already started to dead that crabs in a barrel mindset, right? But let's do it even more, right? Let's plug each other where we can. Let's continue to inspire each other. Let's continue to give each other grace. Continue to, just lend a helping hand, right? Each one teach one. So I think there's no reason for me to have all these resources and stuff if I'm not willing to hand it over to the next person. And I think that's the difference between Rhode Island and a lot of other places. I think this communal aspect we have is a lot different than the other places. So
it's community over competition.
Exactly, right? So we're not competing because at the end of the day, somebody has to make it out. So everybody just keep working hard, man, and let's get there. And yeah, POV to the world, man.
Well, with that, Albert Kyei-Poakwa.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I think that's a good note to end it on. So Until next time, everybody, this has been the Creative Capital Show for creative entrepreneurs. Until next time, everybody, keep on creating.
Love it. Thank
you. And that's it for this episode of the Creative Capital Show. Thank you for listening. And a special thanks goes to this episode's guest, Albert Kyei-Poakwa. The Creative Capital Show is hosted, recorded, edited, mixed, and produced by me, Jason Sylvia. You can listen to the Creative Capital Show over at our website, creativecapitalshow.com. We're also available on Anchor FM, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast hosting platforms. If you like the show, please subscribe. Helps the show out a lot. And be sure to follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the show, and until next time, keep on creating.